Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to be debating the flat Earth, and to start us off is Ozien, and he's going to do a screen share. So the floor is all yours, Ozien, and thank you for being here.
All right, sharing my screen.
Oh, lots of
There it
colors.
goes.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that. All right, let me pull up my PowerPoint. All right, hey there, folks. Good to see you, Mike, and thanks for moderating this debate, Ryan. Welcome to the Flat Earth debate. Let's take a moment to talk about satellite technology and how it would work on a flat Earth. Specifically, let's take a look at the SES-3 satellite, which provides television signals to various locations, including Denver, Colorado, Guadalajara, Mexico, and Quito, Ecuador. I apologize in advance, but I must go over some boring technical jargon. Built by Orbital Sciences Corp of Virginia, SES-3 is beginning a 15-year mission to deliver educational, international, high-definition programming. The subpoint is a point on Earth that the geostationary satellite is directly above. The subpoint of SES-3 is at the following coordinates: latitude of 0 degrees, that's the equator, folks, and longitude of 103 degrees west. This subpoint location is in the Pacific Ocean, west of South America and east of the Line Islands in the Republic of Kiribati. The altitude of the SES-3 satellite is approximately 35,000 kilometers. And for those crazy Americans like myself, it is 22,000 miles above the Earth's surface as it is positioned in a geostationary orbit. Now, back to our regularly scheduled flat Earth debate. If we assume that the Earth is flat and the SES-3 satellite were only 100 miles above us, we would be in trouble. In this scenario, the elevation angles for Denver, Guadalajara, and Quito would be drastically different, and we couldn't get our TV fix in. Similarly, if the satellite were 22,000 miles above us, as it actually is, and the Earth were flat, the elevation angles would be different, but still not ideal with only a good signal if you adjusted another 20 degrees in elevation as per dishpointer.com. But here's the thing. We don't have to worry about that because the Earth ain't flat. Using actual elevation angles, we can adjust our satellite dishes to receive those sweet, sweet signals from SES-3. For example, in Denver, the approximate elevation angle is 53 degrees. In Guadalajara, it's 66 degrees. And in Quito, it's 81 degrees. Of course, if we were on a flat Earth, those angles would be different. In fact, if the satellite were only 100 miles above us, the elevation angle would be a measly 20 degrees, 42 degrees, and 57 degrees, respectively. And if the satellite were really 22,000 miles above us on a flat Earth, the elevation angles would be much higher, much steeper, at 80 degrees, 84 degrees, and 86 degrees. So let's think about that for a moment. Let's imagine we're on a flat plane, and this center part's the equator in the middle of my fingers, and the satellite is 100 miles above us. The distance from Denver to the equator is 2,700 miles. You could drive it, I think. Anyway, so 2,700 miles, a mile above us. That explains why the calculation would be 20 degrees if the satellite were like on a dome or something like that, 100 miles above us. But we don't. We point the dish at 53 degrees, not 20 degrees, at 53 degrees, almost like a 45-degree angle, right? Now, if the satellite were 22,000 miles above us, above the equator, that would, and 2,700 miles to the equator, like this, right? That explains why that angle would be 80 degrees, but it's 57 degrees, which is because the Earth is curved. That angle is from level, level being the perpendicular line to the center of gravity, the center of the mass of the Earth. So that's what your levels do, the little spirit level with the ball, the little bubble inside of it, levels to the center of gravity. That's 57 degrees above that. So if you've got this curve curved up this angle, it stays the same point in the same spot, 22,000 miles above. The curve, the angle is less steep, which is where we get the 53 degrees from. So there you have it, folks. We can rest easy knowing that our satellite TV is safe and sound thanks to the fact that Earth is actually round. And who knows, maybe one day we'll discover that the flat Earth theory was just one big April Fool's joke. Not only is the Earth not flat, but space is also real, with satellites in geostationary orbits over 22,000 miles away. You can prove this yourself. Just travel around the world and point those fancy dishes at those wonder devices in orbit above us. I've got one more juicy example to share with you all, and this one's a doozy, straight from the Modern Day Debate Discord, thanks to one of our founding members, Anathema, also known as Surgeon General, who's a moderator in our YouTube chats. Probably down there right now. Thank you, Shane. Surgeon General, being the cool cat that he is, shot some drone footage for us all to enjoy. And let me tell you, it's a thing of beauty. As the drone ascends, you can clearly see the curvature away of the Earth. It's like a big, beautiful ball just hanging out in the sky, waiting for us to explore it all. And if you're thinking, well, maybe that's just a trick of the light or something, think again. The curvature is there, plain as day. It's undeniable proof that the Earth is round and that all these flat Earth theories are just a bunch of baloney. But wait, there's more. Did you know that as a drone ascends 190 feet, the sun appears over the horizon? Crazy, right? Well, my friends, it's all about trigonometry and the curvature of the Earth. By forming a right triangle with the Earth's radius and the drone's altitude and the hypotenuse, we can use some good old-fashioned tangent function to relate the angle of the drone's altitude. We plug in some numbers, do some math, which I'll spare you from. It explains why geometry is rad and the shape that allows for that big, beautiful light in the sky to reappear for us to enjoy is a curve, and it goes up again to the same altitude, but the sun's set further down. It's not a boring flat Earth shape, but a curved one. And here's the kicker. As the drone ascends, the angle increases, allowing it to see further over the Earth's curved surface, causing the sun to reappear over the horizon. Boom! The trigonometry supports the Earth's curvature. So there you have it, my friends. We've got drone footage, we've got geometry, we've got satellite television and internet. All of these things point to one irrefutable fact. The Earth is round. And if you're still not convinced, well, I guess you'll just have to keep arguing with us cool kids over on Discord who know the truth. Or maybe you can take a trip to space and see for yourself. Or Antarctica, if you want. Just a thought. And that's it for my opening.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that opening, Ozien. And I'm going to remind everybody that our guests are linked in the description. So if you like what you're hearing from either of our guests, you can certainly give them a follow with their links down there. And also in our description, we do have our DebateCon 3.0. If you put even just as much as $1 into our crowdfund, you can watch the whole thing live. And it is a live in-person event if you're able to make it down there to Texas. Unfortunately, I can't make it on April 22nd to Texas, but if you can, that'd be awesome. And for now, we're going to kick it over to Mike. Your old pal Mike is here for the first time ever, and he's got a screen share that he's going to do here, and we'll hand the floor over. Thank you so much for being here, Mike. Not sure if you're on mute. Are you on mute, Mike?
Can you not hear it?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear the video?
Not yet.
Try that again. Can you hear the audio now?
No, unfortunately, I don't hear the audio coming through. Just bear with me here. I might be able to.
So I'm sharing a video that I pre-recorded.
Okay. Let's see if I can move through this. Are you able to do like a voiceover for the video? Is that what you kind of did?
No, I can't. It's all pre-recorded.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear it now?
No, not yet. Give us 1 second, Mike. I'll just let me look this up, and I'll see if I can find out how to put that through. Through screen share. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Happens sometimes. All right. So when you hit the share screen, select the down arrow just to the right of the share sound option to view audio options and switch between mono and stereo. That's not helpful. There might be something in there though. So let's just see. If you go down to your audio, let me just check the old live chat. Some people might know what to do on that. That's always fun when we run into a technical issue. I'm so sorry, everybody.
Maybe if I exit the share. So I exited it right now.
Yeah.
Let me try screen sharing it again. Maybe it'll just fix it. All right, is it sharing right now?
I see the screen, yeah.
All right, let me click it. It should immediately have sound. If it doesn't tell me, I'm going to click it right now.
Okay. No sound. Share with audio in Zoom. So people in the chat are saying that you need to click share the audio when you do your screen share. Sorry, I wasn't aware that it was going to be like a video like that, so I wasn't totally prepared for that. So sorry.
Sorry. So it's not muted. It says it's not muted, and I'm not sure how to get into the screen share options. Oh man.
So if you exit the screen share, actually down at the bottom, if there's a little arrow there.
I think I found it.
Okay, perfect. All right.
First off, can I say that if you have this type of image in mind for what a common flat Earth or geocentric model is, then please wipe this image from your mind. This is just the heliocentric model with a flattened out Earth, and the illustrator of this image only demonstrates the complete lack of understanding of geocentrism. Is this what it looks like? Or this? Can I be upfront and say that I don't know? Can I be upfront and admit that there are too many missing pieces of the puzzle to make a completely accurate picture at this time, in my opinion? Since 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, which makes it illegal for any private visitation or exploration of anything beyond the 60th south parallel, which would be this line right here. Many people aren't familiar that much of the map on a heliocentric Earth and a geocentric Earth match fairly close in most aspects in the northern hemisphere, like on this modern azimuthal equidistant projection. It's not until you venture further and further south that the maps begin to diverge greatly. And interestingly enough, over 55 countries now uphold a treaty enacted in on everything starting from the 60th south parallel, including Antarctica. It's a bit curious that an alleged mass of ice on the bottom of a sphere is one of the most restricted places on Earth. So I acknowledge that there are limitations, such as this example, that prevent me from being able to fully back any model at this point in my journey. But I will say that I've seen more than enough to make me reject the modern heliocentric model and the globe model Earth. The nail in the coffin for the globe model Earth is the abundance of experimentation that has been conducted to test the convexity of the Earth's surface. These ever-growing examples repeatedly demonstrate that the required amount of curvature and rate of drop required by the globe model Earth can't be detected and doesn't exist. I have 22 such experiments that I found valuable on my Flat Earth Archive Facebook page, but I have personally seen at least triple that amount of experiments since 2017, and many more than that are in existence. I'm going to share a few examples that can't be viewed in full right now or broken down in detail due to time constraints, but should help illustrate what I'm saying. The first being the very first high-powered laser experiment I saw, conducted over a 7.5-mile distance, where a man used GPS coordinates and drove his snowmobile over a frozen lake to test the convexity and demonstrated that the globe model Earth curvature was absent. Or examples of high-altitude footage, where landmarks are visible like mountain ranges that should be behind the curvature of the Earth. There are even experiments using high-powered telescopic zoom lenses with infrared filters, which eliminates a lot of visual interference, also demonstrating the absence of necessary curvature. Or how about this series of high-powered laser experiments released in 2021 that are the most precise series of experiments in existence up to this point in time, using high-powered lasers to test the convexity of the Earth. These experiments took place in 2016 through 2020 in multiple locations, in varying weather conditions, and ultimately culminating in a GPS-guided laser system to test for the curvature and required rate of drop for the globe model Earth, and as always, it couldn't be found. Usually, detractors use the word refraction to brush off every one of these examples, but in this series of laser experiments, they went as far as to document the reported humidity level at the time of the experiment and factor the amount of expected refraction into their findings. The only other claim I've seen against such experiments is that the calculation to find the amount of curvature in these examples is wrong, because the calculation is based on a parabola and not a sphere. This is a partially true claim. The part of the claim that is left out, though, is that when you Google an Earth curvature calculator, you will find that they absolutely affirm the rates of drop in these experiments. So are Earth curvature calculators wrong? Of course not. The misunderstanding is that the parabolic calculation being used does accurately work on the globe model Earth's surface, but only up to a point. After around 1,000 miles, it loses its accuracy. But it's a perfectly accurate linear point A to point B calculation for anything under 1,000 miles on the globe model Earth, which all of these experiments are. The last experiment I want to mention from my page that is irrefutable and completely bypasses refraction and parabolic calculations altogether is this experiment using an MPU 6050 high-precision gyroscope and accelerometer. The MPU 6050 is a device used today in modern robotics, smartphones, drones, and gaming systems, among other things. It has the ability to hold a point in space and measure for pitch, roll, or yaw, and can detect the slightest deviation in 6 axes of motion. In this experiment, a gentleman drove over 200 miles to see if the MPU 6050 could detect the necessary amount of pitch that would exist on the globe model Earth or anything near it, and once again, the globe model Earth's curvature was nowhere to be found. But taking a look outside of just experiments, if you understand the scale and rate of drop that the globe model Earth requires, then you know the view from this weather balloon footage at around 120,000 feet is completely impossible. Remember, they tell you that standing on the beach, you can watch boats disappear over the curvature of the Earth, which they should, since in just 7 miles, 32 feet of drop should exist.
One of the things you can see yourself with a pair of binoculars is if you actually go out to a lake and there are boats on that lake, the farther away a boat is, the more the bottom of the boat will disappear, and you'll basically just see the mast of the boat. And as a boat goes farther and farther away, the last thing you will see is the very top of the mast of that boat. And that's because the boat is actually going over the horizon that's curved. And that means that as it goes farther and farther away, you see less and less of the bottom of it and more of the top of that. You can see that with binoculars, by an ocean, by a lake. It's really easy. That wouldn't happen if the Earth were flat.
I should note that we have time-lapse footage that debunks this claim. Well, were you aware that in 200 miles, over 26,000 feet of drop should exist on the globe model Earth? That's approaching the height of Mount Everest worth of drop to the horizon. Did you know that from an average commercial airline flight at around 35,000 feet under clear conditions, the the average person can see over 200 miles to the horizon. And here at over 100,000 feet in altitude, well beyond 200 miles to the horizon are visible, and there's no visible drop, with literally many hundreds of miles in view on both the X and Y axes. This is an impossible view according to the globe model Earth's own dimensions. If boats can allegedly be seen disappearing over the curvature while standing on the beach, then there is no excuse for the complete absence of curvature and drop from this view. Its own dimensions require extremely visible and present drop at this height. There is so much more I could demonstrate and share, but I know we have a time limit, so I'm hoping we can dig further tonight into some of the questions that accompany this type of subject matter, along with a list of verifiable examples from observable reality that contradict and debunk the modern heliocentric model. I would also like to note, for all the viewers, that a live debate is not the best place to gain in-depth knowledge about this subject matter due to time constraints and format, but it is a good place to begin pondering some serious questions. I currently have 65 videos on my Flat Earth Archive page on Facebook if you desire further research on this subject. There is also a list in the description on the Flat Earth Archive page providing links to other pages and channels that are valuable resources on this topic. Ultimately, I do believe this subject will lead the diligent truth seeker to the one who created this beautiful place we call Earth. Just as Scripture states, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard."
Hey, everybody, we made our way through it. Thank you so much for your patience. So, we're going to kick it open into more of an open discussion, cross examination. So, we're going to start with your old pal Mike, and we're going to address what Ozien had presented in his intro there. So, without further ado, I'll kick it over to your old pal Mike, and thank you so much, guys, for your patience.
So obviously I showed footage way higher than that drone footage where the curvature wasn't in existence at that point. I did want to show a quick clip if I can find it here. Yeah, I got it right here. This is of course. So it's footage of the sun basically.
Just to push back, I wasn't showing horizon curve in that
Oh,
footage.
okay.
You understand that, right?
Oh, I thought that was you were saying
No,
okay, I misunderstood there then.
no, forward and back curvature. That's why the sun reappears as you're coming up over.
Yep, see this screen share?
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry
see
about
there
that.
where the sun is going down. Yes,
Yeah,
the
so here
sun's
we
going
go.
down.
Screen share.
So this
that,
is
guys.
standing on the beach, and same thing can be done with bringing the sun that looked like it was beyond the horizon right back up over it using a high-powered zoom lens. So these things obviously can be done.
But that wasn't what the example was that you saw. We didn't zoom in. We went to a higher elevation.
Yeah,
Totally different.
yeah. I was just looking at it more like you're saying if you rise higher, then the sun comes back over the horizon. But I'm just pointing
Yes.
out that you can even do it at the at ground level. You can bring it back in
Well,
with a high enough zoom lens or whatever.
no, that's not but that's not analogous. The drone footage you saw was not analogous to zooming into the sun. So now if the sun had entirely vanished like it was in the drone footage and you were able to zoom in and see the sun again, that would have been analogous. But what you saw in my footage was the sun vanishes, send the drone straight up and the sun reappears. That's because of the tangent line against the curve of the earth. You're coming up and you're seeing further around the curve. Like you would understand that like with a regular ball, like if you're flat on the ball, you can't see as far around the ball as if you rise in elevation above the ball, right?
Yeah,
You see more of the
absolutely.
ball.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And that's the same way perspective works over a plane. You know, the higher you rise, the further you can see. That's how. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same
Yeah.
thing, but yeah.
But that's because you're getting further away. So if you take the let's take a flat plane, right? So if you go further away from something, does it get smaller in both dimensions, in width and in height?
When you move further away from your perspective, it does, not
Yeah.
physically, but
Not with drone footage, it doesn't. So the first drone footage, that 17-second clip, if you watched it, you could see as the drone goes up, the ship gets taller and narrower. So it doesn't get bigger in both dimensions. It gets bigger in this dimension because you're seeing around the curve. It gets shorter in this dimension because the drone's further away when it goes straight up. So that's only explainable because it's curving away.
yeah, I just don't agree there. I mean, you can see that it's not curving in the footage. There's no curve or drop, but you think because rising above the surface that it is demonstrating that it's a ball. But again, the same thing happens over a plane. The higher you rise, the more visibility you have.
But
The higher you rise,
it shouldn't get narrower like the first drone footage does. It shouldn't get narrower.
I'm not exactly. Yeah, I don't have the memory to
Yeah,
remember what you're talking about, the narrow portion or whatever. But
I wish I could share that again, but I could really quick. Let me show you.
if you want to share it,
Yeah, you sure can share it again if you'd like. That's kind of what we were hoping to do, is go into like a cross examination of what you guys presented in your intros, back and forth. So if you wanted to share what you had there, Ozien, and then we'll get some commentary from our other interlocutor here. There, that's up on the screen. You're good to go.
Not sure how to blow this up, but let me just hit F5. So if you look at this video here, and so at the ground, you can see the ship. Now I measured this in pixels because it's a picture, right? So I clipped it out when it was at the ground. So the first image is the drone is at sea level, or actually the level of Lake Huron. And at the top one, it's when the drone, I think, is at like 220 feet. So as you come up, you can see the drone actually gets slightly narrower and taller. It's something like it gets 25% taller and 15% narrower when it's at the maximum altitude. So that's cutting out the picture. And you can see in the image, now it's not perfect, right? Because I'm not using a perfect camera, right? But you can tell that the ship is getting narrower and taller as it goes up in altitude, and went straight up above me. It's not like it went further away behind me or anything like that. It went straight up. So that the perspective in both angles change differently.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. The interesting part about that, though, is if you're rising over a spherical surface, then the things in the foreground should be higher than the horizon line. But in your picture, you can literally see the horizon line higher than the ship as you raise up. So how does that work on a ball?
You're seeing the water over the ship.
No, it's high. Pull that image back up, and you'll see the water lines above the boat. On a spherical surface,
correct.
it has to drop.
No, that's not what happened. It's not far enough away. So it's not dropping fast enough. That drop there is maybe like 15 feet to the ship. To the horizon, it's maybe like 20 feet. It's not like you're seeing, like, okay, you brought up another example with 1,000 miles is also, it's not accurate for, it's like 20% air at 1,000 miles if you use the 8 inches per mile squared versus the actual curve calculator for the globe is something like 20% difference. But at 1,000 miles, it's something like 663,000 feet. At 1 mile, let's say the ship is 1 mile, that means it's only 8-inch drop. Let's say the ship is a couple miles, it's going to be like a 2-foot drop. If their horizon's like 5 miles out, it's only going to be, I don't know, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but it's not going to be a dramatic drop.
Yeah, it's a 16-foot drop in 5 miles. At 7 miles, it's 32 feet.
Okay,
so in 7 miles, a boat should have disappeared almost entirely at that point.
Well, the boat was 7 miles away. It was only
not your boat, but I'm saying on my page, I have time-lapse footage where someone records a boat for 25 minutes straight sailing out to sea, where they break it down frame by frame. And yes, the bottom of course is going to get more obscured as you go further because the density of the atmosphere is
going around the curve. But my drone footage shows differently. It shows it coming back into focus, right? So the atmosphere is still the same. You're just seeing less atmosphere along the surface of the Earth, but it's not like the drone's way up there. It's only like 200 feet above you. So, and you're not going to see the horizon drop at that distance. It's only 200 feet above. It's like if you go up an escalator, the horizon's not going to drop very much. But what's cool is you can see the water on the other side of the ship. And you can't see infinite distance away.
But you do agree that the horizon gets lower and lower further from your vantage point on a sphere, correct?
Yes, it does.
So why is the horizon line that's behind the boat higher than the boat?
Because you're above the boat. No, you're above the boat looking down. It is lower, but it's only a couple feet lower. But because the boat's so much closer to you and you're seeing more water behind it, it's your eyes seeing that water behind it. So the drop on my image, if you look at scale, so if you see to the horizon, let's say it's 7 miles to the horizon, the sky above it's 7, I don't know, it's like however many miles it is above it. I didn't do the math for any of that stuff, right? So that distance is a lot further than it is to the ship. So that the scale of that drop of the water at the horizon is going to be like minuscule as a percent of that overall image compared to the close-in ship that's really close, where you're going to see a much more dramatic difference in scale with the change in altitude of the ship. So you're going to see the water behind it. So the horizon, if I was to measure it, maybe it drops a pixel or something like that, but I'd actually have to measure it. So I wouldn't even consider that to be accurate because that could just be camera winkle, could cause a pixel difference in the horizon. So
all I was saying about the time-lapse footage of the boat, which is unrelated to what your imagery is. So don't use it as a refutation to what you're saying. I'm just saying that I have footage, physical footage, where someone time-lapse records a ship sailing out to sea. I put in the average speed that this boat could be traveling, and I degrade it and give it an even lower speed and show that it's got to be well over 7 miles out. Yet the full boat, other than the obscured bottom from, surface tension and atmosphere, is completely visible when the boat should have been completely buried behind the curvature of the earth. I mean, it's verifiable. It's, they zoom in on it and record it for 25 straight minutes sailing out to sea.
Okay,
And you can calculate how many miles it's gone roughly at that point, and it should have been disappeared, yet there it is,
But you do get refraction. You can see things further away.
Sometimes.
It causes, sometimes it depends on the temperature, the time of day. I don't know all the math involved. I'm not a scientist, by the way, but that's why that's not the evidence I presented. I presented specific evidence that showed, like with the satellite footage in particular, like where the satellite presentation I put up, like you can point your dishes at that satellite and get those services, and you can get the transponder information from that satellite. So if you, like, how high do you think the dome, do you think there's a dome, or do you just not know? Do you think there's satellites?
I believe there are satellites attached to high altitude balloons and weather balloons. Those definitely exist.
All right.
How high?
Before we move over to your old pal Mike's examples there.
Well, this is Mike.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, where we're just trying to focus on the model that you presented for the globe there at the intro. We'll just try to focus on that for another 5 odd minutes, and then we'll move over to what Mike presented in his opening there. So,
yeah, I mean, as far as the satellite thing, I just think it's important for people to understand that, they've been using RF waves in triangulation for locating things since prior to the advent of satellites. You can look up Decca navigator systems, which began in the 1940s. So the technology to triangulate things, the technology that governs pretty much all of our internet and data when it goes from one continent to the other is all fiber optic cables. If you just eliminated, if you believe satellites are up there, even if you eliminated satellites altogether, all the technology we currently use is fully capable, and probably no one would notice a difference. The other thing too is when you look up who owns the frequencies for these satellites, they're government-owned frequencies. So it's not like we can go up there and verify whether the RF wave is going to a satellite or whether it's going to a tower or whether it's going to a balloon. None of us can visually follow that RF wave to where its receiver is, right? It's being sent out, but you assume it's a satellite.
You can, though, with your antenna. So you can point it at the transmitter with your antenna, and you don't have fiber cable connected to your antenna. So if you get satellite television, I've lived out in the country where I was on entirely off grid with solar panels and everything like that. I had a television and I had a satellite dish that was powered by solar panels, no wired connections to my house at all. That dish has to be pointed at a specific azimuth, this angle, and elevation angle to be able to receive that signal from the satellite dish. And there's no towers anywhere. So you can't magically make RF signals go, well, you get skip and stuff like that, but to get a strong, sturdy signal, and at the frequencies we're talking about too, you don't get that type of skip because they're very, very high frequency, and you can measure that. Now, I am an electronics technician, so I do understand communication theory a bit if you have any questions about that. But it has to be pointed directly at that dish. So I've lived all over the country. The angles we point our dishes are different depending on where we're at in the country, because those satellites are like 30 some or 20 some thousand miles in elevation above the earth. So it can't be balloons that are close in. So if you're saying there's like the dome is 22,000 miles above the earth and we send stuff up there somehow to attach to the dome, I mean, that would be the only way you could.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. But also there's the concept of, and you maybe know more about this than I do, I haven't studied it super in depth, but about bouncing signals off the ionosphere and whatnot, and all that stuff. So there are other ways. And I mean, I've also seen videos with the guys that go out in the wilderness with their satellite phone, right, for emergencies, and they're out in a wide open spot and they can't catch a signal. So again, we could talk about it, but in all honesty, none of us can verify personally where the signal's headed. I understand that you're saying the angle should connect to where the satellite should be, but theoretically, there could be a tower that you're unaware of. It could be bouncing off the ionosphere. There could be other options that we're not aware of. And do you know where that signal was, who it was owned by?
I told you I think it was some company in Virginia.
Well, not the TV provider, but who actually owns the satellite that the signal's allegedly going to? Because generally it's government.
Place out of Virginia. No, it's I'll tell you exactly who it was. I wrote it down. Write that
They
down.
own the satellite?
Yeah, they owned it, launched it, everything. It's not the government. So people put up personal satellites all the time. So WITSE had a debate recently where the guy like sent up his own like satellite. It's not like at 22,000 miles in geostationary orbit, but you can send your own satellite up into orbit and you can configure it to do stuff, and you can read signals from your own satellite. This is a thing you can do yourself. But in this case, this satellite has to be 22,000 miles away, or roughly 22,000 miles away, for people in Ecuador, Mexico, and United States to all see the satellite. And their dishes have to be pointed at that angle. So to try to hand wave that away and explain it like, oh, somehow we bounce signals off that reflect in that perfect angle and is strong enough with that reflection to get high def signals at all these places, that sounds magical to me. It's not based on communication theory that I understand. I don't know how you would build a transmitter at those frequencies to cause it to skip off the ionosphere. Then that's presupposing there's an ionosphere, which is a globe Earth claim. So I don't know how you would do that on a flat Earth unless there's actually something up there at 22,000 miles above the Earth.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something that it's not something I can personally verify. So, what can I say on that subject, right? Either it is going to a satellite that's cruising around the sphere, right, of 24,901 miles, or it's not. The things I can verify, though, is testing the convexity of the Earth's surface. And every legitimate experiment I've ever seen, and I've seen tons, find that curvature absent. So maybe satellites are orbiting up there, but what are the dimensions of the Earth that it's orbiting around if we can never detect the rate of drop that should exist with lasers, with telescopic zoom lenses? What about that MPU 6050? I mean, that's a high precision gyroscope and accelerometer. It doesn't worry about refraction. It doesn't worry about parabolic calculations. He drove 200 miles around Lake Erie. It should pick up the pitch of the Earth if it existed, but once again, the pitch wasn't there.
It depends. But that depends on how much friction there is in the gyroscope and how far you go, how much torsion there is to get the pressure on the gyroscope to be able to measure the angle difference. He said 200 miles. I'm not sure what the angular difference is between 200 miles is. Do you know?
I think it was 13 degrees of pitch is what he said in the experiment, but I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and watch it. But so like I said, in 200 miles, 26,000 feet of drop should exist on the globe model Earth from a point A to point B. Now that's according to Earth curvature calculators. I'm not just typing out the math or writing out the math. I'm using a calculator designed specifically for knowing the rate of drop on the globe model Earth. So 26,000 feet is a pretty significant amount, and he couldn't measure the pitch. And if these things were so sensitive to the point where it couldn't pick up that pitch, doesn't make sense that they'd use it in robotics or drones that are flying all different directions throughout the sky. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense in that regard. But but I mean, if you want to move on to cross-examining my stuff,
I just want to point out, you said that there wasn't a measurement that showed there was a curvature. I just showed drone footage that showed that, so showed a drop. So I'd have to see the tests you were talking about to see how they controlled for environmental factors, to see how accurate the device was they were using, to see what type of error there was within the device. And you have the where the used a gyroscope, right? And they were able to measure the 15 degree per hour
Not
change of the
that.
gyroscope. So
Oh
besides
gosh.
the fact, but that's true. You can use, there's all types of ways you can measure the angular rotation of the Earth that uses instruments like that. And you can do that yourself. So
Now
I'd have to see the test.
yeah, here's something interesting though. Someone will be willing to scrutinize the gyroscope test I brought up, but then they'll watch Bob Nodell on Behind the Curve bust out his $20,000 gyroscope that I can't find a model number for anywhere, where I can't find a single other scientist on this earth modeling this amazing gyroscope that picks up the rotation of the earth. You've used it?
Not that one, but when I was in the US Navy, I worked on Hornets and Super Hornets and stuff like that. Before we transitioned to GPS with the older Hornets, and when we changed theater of operations, we'd have to recalibrate the INS system, which uses 3 gyroscopes. You have an X radius or X axis, Y axis, and Z axis gyroscope to calculate your location, right? So when we changed theater of operations, we had to recalibrate those for where we were at in that new theater, because where we were out on the Earth was different because the angle's different.
But I'm not understanding how that has to do with the rotation of the earth or Bob's gyroscope that everyone cites.
It has exactly to do with that 200-mile change you had. It's because when you change your location like that, it does affect the INS system. It has to be recalibrated for that new location. You have to turn it off. You have to level out. And it's been 20 years since I've worked on these things, so excuse me, but we had to recalibrate the INS, which was gyroscopes.
Yeah, that's the same thing he did in that experiment when he drove around Lake Erie. You know, he made sure to show that he was calibrating it, that he was zeroing out, that he leveled it, and there should have been significant pitch in 200 miles, and it wasn't there.
Depends on the precession. It might, if it's not very accurate, it can change a little bit on its own. So I'd have to know. He'd have to show it to me, so I could look at it.
Yeah. It's on the page. Yeah, I know we can't really watch through entire experiments right now, but yeah.
Come to our Discord and post it. I'll take a look at it. So, but anyways, I guess it's your turn to get real.
Yeah,
I think we've been talking
before we
pretty
kick
good.
into what your old pal Mike had presented in his intro there, I just want to remind everybody once again, you know, if you haven't already, give this video a like and share it out. We want to get these debates out to as many people as we can, and huzzah, with the magic of changing the screens over, we should have Aaron Ra over here with T-Jump. Just to say that we do have a Q&A at the end of this debate. Just a reminder to all our guests in the live chat, make sure that you're going to be addressing the arguments that our debaters have presented and not attacking the individual. And with that, we'll kick it over to Ozien, and we'll focus on the flat Earth model for a hardcore second, all right?
All right, so you went over a lot of stuff in your debate, in your opening video, and I just want to focus on the end, really. So, because I personally want to know, like, do you believe that if the Earth is a globe, that it refutes your religious beliefs?
No, because I've seen wonderful explanations from people who believe in the heliocentric model, showing its precision and how it points to a creator. So I don't think believing in the globe or believing in the flat Earth should really shake your faith either way. But I would say that once you realize we are on an enclosed stationary plane, it does tend to point more to a creator than, you know, a spherical object, you know, going through a vacuum that's ever expanding, and kind of unguided forces with no intelligence behind it put it all together. Whereas if you're in an enclosed stationary system, you know, it's a little harder to explain it outside of a creator. Doesn't mean it absolutely points to a creator. I know people who are atheists who also denounce the globe model Earth and heliocentric model, but in general, most people, when they start to look at that stuff, they do start to think about their creator. And I've met people who have started believing in God simply due to this subject matter that were atheists prior. So
yeah, so I just want to, like, a closed system means no energy can enter or leave the system, which means it can't be created by external things. It would have to be eternally existent in a closed system, right?
unless the source itself was eternally existent. right? And that
Well,
would be,
then it's not a closed system. It has a way for energy and material to get into the system, so it's not
yeah, it's
completely
not,
closed.
yeah, I would agree with that. It's not a, you
Yep.
know, just like it makes more sense to have gas pressure, in a closed system than it does bordering a vacuum,
Well,
like on the globe.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to point out there went to the beauty of the closed system for a God being necessary to create the closed system. But on top of that, too, like the modern theories of cosmology, some people posit that the universe is a closed system. So, which means it's eternally like coexistent. Like energy and matter can't be created or destroyed. But there's other theories of quantum theories where the universe expanded out of quantum foam or whatever. I'm not a cosmologist either, so I'm just like going off the top of my head. But I just want to point that out that we don't know if the universe is a closed system. We do know that the Earth is not a closed system because stuff falls from the sky, right?
Yeah. I don't, stuff falling from the sky, you're talking about like meteors and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they fall from the
Yeah.
sky.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that would, because so in a biblical cosmological model, all the heavenly bodies would be within the enclosed system. So whatever's falling out of the sky would be within that enclosed system.
But you don't know, like, see, that's illogical. I don't know where that would come from. Like, we can see the sky, so like we can see telescopes. We can see when meteorites are coming to the Earth, and we can calculate how long it's going to take them to arrive. And the Earth is spinning, or your perspective is spinning, if you don't want to consider the globe to be spinning. And with all that, we can calculate when these things are going to go hit our atmosphere, go into our atmosphere, go around our atmosphere, whatever, and pretty precisely, all based upon the idea that it's a globe, which to me indicates that it's not coming from that closed system. It's coming, unless you consider the universe to be a closed system, then you could say it's coming from the universe.
But that's a fallacy to think that you need the heliocentric model to model these basically, like whether it's eclipses or the motion of the heavenly bodies or whether it's like Halley's Comet. These things are all cyclical. These are things that people documented prior to knowing about the heliocentric model. There's the astronomical clock in Prague that's been around since the 1400s that still holds these cycles, obviously not Halley's Comet and whatnot, but in the 1400s, they were still doing it. The Mayans were able to have incredible calculations based on celestial events. The misnomer that you need the heliocentric model. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I would say that on the heliocentric model, these things can't accurately be modeled. I saw your Star Trails video when you debated Iron Horse, and it's really interesting because that's not the heliocentric model. That's more of a Copernican or Kepler-based model where the sun would be stationary. Those stars would not be doing that. And that's another thing that's been really hard for me trying to hold on to the heliocentric model when I was first testing these things, was especially the North Star. I could not find a single 3D model that took account of the sun's motion into the model. Anyone can go look it up on YouTube and say, how does, in fact, I have one.
Well,
Do you
don't
mind
use
if I,
YouTube. I wouldn't
no,
use YouTube.
I won't use YouTube, but do you mind if I show something on the North Star real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, we can do that. You're going to share your screen?
Yeah, I'll share my screen real quick.
I'm just going to say all the model includes the sun when we're calculating where the North Star is. Like the sun isn't impacting the North Star, just because it's too far away. It impacts the Earth, I guess, but it doesn't impact the star.
I've done the wrong thing. Just wait 1 second. Screen share. And
yeah,
there you go.
For example, this would be an image of how Polaris stays, above the Earth, right? There's its circuit, but the sun's not moving whatsoever from this perspective. When you look up a 3D model, this is what you get of Polaris. This is what they show you of how Polaris stays above the globe model Earth. But this right here is the motion required by the heliocentric model. Maybe not this exact model, but
That's way too fast.
Actually, we wouldn't be able to see it if it was moving the speed it's allegedly moving. It's moving, this sun is supposed to be moving over 500,000 miles per hour. And that completely contradicts this model right here, where it's just staying stationary, looking up at Polaris. It takes no account of the motion of the sun. And it's really weird because I can look up the speed of Sirius. I can look up the speed of Arcturus. I can look up the speed of Betelgeuse. When I type up the speed of Polaris, I'm not saying it's not documented somewhere, but I can't seem to find it. It's almost like it's just sort of stationary there, you know?
Relatively to our North Pole, it relatively is stationary, right? I think there's a little bit of change over like thousands of years, but relatively from day to day, there's no perspective difference to Earth. And it is because it's 433 light years away. So at the speed of light, it would take 433 of our years for the light to get to Polaris.
And it should be moving on its own orbit, correct?
Yeah, in its own. Where is Polaris?
Yeah,
So
because
yeah. So
it's
Polaris
far
is
from our solar system, so
yeah. So
it's not tied to our solar system, yet it stays directly above us as though it is. And that's what I'm saying is every time they model something, it's honestly using either like a Copernican model where the sun is stationary. It's not the heliocentric model. They're telling you the heliocentric model is accurate, but then when they're giving you a 3D model, it's actually like a Copernican system where the sun would be stationary.
Yeah. So okay, so the North Star has not always been like it has been a different star, right? It hasn't always been in that location. Like we have historical accounts of the axes of the Earth changing, where the North Star is changing, right? So it's not always been in the same location. It does change slightly.
I've never heard another historical account. I do know that modern heliocentrism tells us that like you said, every 100,000 years, you know, the North Star can change, or millions of years, or whatever it is, right? But
it's not.
I'm not aware of any ancient observations showing that the North Star has changed its trajectory.
26,000 years is what I googled, because of the Earth's axis of rotation wobbles a little bit. So.
But regardless of that, that's nowhere near the amount of movement required by the heliocentric model. It's if it was, then they would 3D model it, and they wouldn't always use a Copernican model where the sun seems stationary. There's no motion of the sun in that 3D model I just showed you, where the Earth is.
There is motion of the sun.
Yeah,
there is motion of the sun in that 3D model. Like the stars will change if you speed it up super quick, like a million years per second.
I can pull it back up. It's just spinning in a circle over and over. But it should be following a sun that's going 500,000 miles.
You have to speed it up. You have to make it super fast to see that change. You have to see the change in perspective with different stars. You have to see a model. I don't know if there is one. I could get my universe sandbox out, but the universe sandbox only deals with like solar systems. I'd have to find a actual universe sandbox model, but it does change. You'd have to speed it up super fast to see that the other stars are also changing their position based upon their rotation around the center of the galaxy, because everything's rotating in the same direction, or almost everything's rotating in the same direction around the galaxy and around their own stars and stuff like that. You have some bodies that rotate in reverse directions, but I think overall, like the spiral arms of the universe that are pulling behind, where all these solar systems are rotating around the galaxy. Like it just takes, like, how long does it take for the universe or the solar system rotate around the galaxy?
Off the top of my head, I used to know.
Yeah, it's 230 million years. So 230 million years for our sun to make one rotation around the galaxy. So, and all the other stars are doing the same thing. They're all rotating around the galaxy also. So to see that change in perspective means that the different stars have to rotate at different rates, if everything was, and they're not rotating at different rates, but if everything was rotating at different rates, and the relationship between all the stars wouldn't change at all from the center of the galaxy. So that's why.
It's actually the motion. I understand that you're saying the whole course takes 200 and whatever it was, 30 million years to get around it.
Yeah.
But the speed is not slow. The speed is exceedingly fast. The distance is far. But the speed is mind-boggling fast.
Yeah, but everything else is moving with it, though. Like everything's moving at 514.
They're supposed to be on their own trajectories around whatever gravitational point they have within their sphere of influence. They should not be being governed by our sun and how our motion is moving.
It's not governed by our sun. It's the reason that our sun's rotation around the center of the universe is not governed by our sun. It's related to our sun because it's the gravity of the sun, but in comparison to the overall galaxy, our sun has no gravity as a percentage of the overall mass of the galaxy. So it's minuscule effect on its rotation. The rotation's based upon the galaxy.
It's just, like I said, there's not a single model that shows the motion of the sun involved. We can say that, oh yeah, in a long time, that sun will show the deviation of the North Star, but it's never modeled. It's only spoken. Like you're doing right now, it's spoken but never modeled. So yeah, if you want to share a model at some point that does take into account the motion of the sun, rather than just showing us, like I showed you in that very first slide, when you look up an image of how does the pole star stay above us, the sun is just sitting there in the middle, and there's basically a circuit set for the Earth to travel around the sun, and the tilt of the Earth, keeps Polaris above it in the heliocentric model. But again, that's a Copernican model. The sun has no motion in that image, nor in that 3D model that I showed. So it can be said that no, it just tracks with us. Well, what's the speed of Polaris? After all those hundreds of millions of miles, you're saying that that's tracking with a sun that is, like you said, has no bearing on that star whatsoever, according to the heliocentric model. It has nothing to draw it to it. The Earth has nothing to draw it to it. They're on their own patterns at excessive rates. 500,000 miles an hour is pretty fast. That's exceedingly fast. The speed of sound is only like 700 miles per hour. The bullet shoots at like 1,000 miles an hour. We're going 500,000 miles an hour, and Polaris stays there with the sun moving at that motion. It doesn't work, but we can say that it works, but then someone should model how it works. If it does work, then someone should make a 3D model and not just say it works. That's my perspective. Can't just say it, you should model it.
Yeah, so so the speed of light's like what, 276,000 miles per hour, is that correct? It's 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second is the speed of light. And our sun is only moving, what is it, like 500,000 miles per hour, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's moving much slower than the speed of light. And the North Star is, what did I say, like several hundred light years away, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter. But anyway, so I'd have to look at it to see what the math involved and how you could calculate where the North Star is. There are games that do model the universe. You could play those, but I haven't seen anywhere you can speed up like the time lapse. But they move the stars around the galaxy. Like there's where they what do they call it? Where they add the artificially generated stars, because we don't know what all the stars are and all the planets are in our galaxy, right? We haven't mapped it all out. Like we see a lot of stuff that's close in. We see other galaxies and stuff like that, but we don't like know everything that's there. We're sort of closed into a smaller area. Then so you won't see a model that could accurately tell you where everything is located, right?
There isn't. I've looked. They're Well, there may be
Because we
out
don't
there
know.
somewhere, but I haven't. Yeah, but something as simple as Polaris, the speed should be easily looked up when you Google it, and they should have a 3D model that's not a Copernican model. They should have
What speed are you talking about?
well, the speed of Polaris. How fast is it moving? I mean, maybe you can find it right now. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, the speed listed out there. I'm just saying when I looked up the other stars, it was very easy to find their speed of motion or their rate of motion. And when I type in what's the speed of the North Star, there's a bunch of articles. It tells you how many light years away it is, all that stuff. But where is its actual speed? And
What do
its
you mean?
it has an orbit. It's not just standing there, right? In your
Speed in
perspective.
relationship to what? In
No,
relationship to the
just speed. Just speed, not in
speed is in relationship to something else.
well, distance.
No, speed
Well,
is
miles per hour is speed
no.
in distance.
So speed is how fast you're moving away from something else, right? This perspective, it's relative speed to you. Like, so we're traveling at 550,000 miles per hour around the Milky Way, right? But from our perspective here on Earth, when we look at the sun, it's like we're just orbiting the sun once a year, right? In relationship. So we're not seeing that speed because the speed is relative to where you are located. So when you ask me how fast Polaris is going, I need to know in relationship to what? Are you talking about in relationship to the center of the Milky Way? Because the Milky Way is moving too, and space is expanding. Other galaxies are moving. Like the speeds get astronomical if you really care about the relative speeds.
Yeah, when I say I'm asking for speed, like when I look up Sirius, it tells me it's moving 16 kilometers per second. When I look up Betelgeuse, it tells me it's going 30 kilometers per second.
In relationship to what?
I didn't make those numbers up. That's what do you mean in relationship? A kilometer is a measurement.
Across the sky?
Yeah, it's a measurement. A kilometer is a measurement, and it's telling you how far in that unit that it's moving.
How fast does it say?
So it says Sirius is moving 16 kilometers per second. Arcturus is moving 100. These are off Google. Just Google them. You can go how fast is Sirius moving?
Okay.
Google
17,000 miles per hour. In relationship to us.
Well, no, it's just in relationship to kilometers.
No, it's in relationship to the sun. So in relationship to the sun.
That's not what it says.
No, it says right here. And thanks. So I Google how fast is Sirius moving. And thanks to the relative motions of Sirius and the sun, Sirius is inching closer. So Sirius is coming towards us at 17,000 miles per hour. So its relative speeds is saying in relationship to the sun, Sirius is coming towards us at 17,000 miles per hour.
At 17 miles per hour. That's a measurement. They're saying it's coming close to us at 17, that measurement. It's not, I'm not sure how to better explain that. Miles per hour or kilometers per second is taking a unit, a well-known distance, and adding how fast it's moving over that distance.
Because
when I look up Polaris, it doesn't have that. Where is that? You just looked it up for Sirius. Where is Polaris's motion?
Well, so we know how far away we are from Sirius, right? So we know the distances, and we can measure the angular size of Sirius. Imagine how they're doing it over a period of time, and they can see how quickly it's coming towards us. So we can look to see how far away is Sirius. So I can't spell 8.6 light years away. So Sirius is really close to us. So it's easier for us to see the angular size of Sirius than it is to see the angular size of the North Star, because the North Star is much, much further away. So for a better sense, so how fast is Polaris moving towards or away from the sun? Oh, look. Polaris is moving at 17 kilometers per second. towards the sun at 17 kilometers per second. I found it.
Yeah, and that's my point is why is that motion never taken into account? The sun's moving 500,000 miles an hour on its own trajectory. And then you're saying that Polaris is moving towards us at that speed and rate of motion. So
Yeah.
why is it never taken into account when they 3D model it? Why is it always the Earth spinning on a circle that appears to not move?
So it's 431 times, it's 431 times 300 million meters away, and is traveling towards us at 17,000 meters. So I'd have to do the math. It's something billions of meters away. It's moving at us at 17,000. So if we remove threes, it's something like a million meters away, and it's moving at us at like a meter per second or something like that. I'd have to do the math. Like, it's absurdly large distances and super slow in relationship to the speed. And I did that math wrong. Please fact check me if you want to. I fucked that math up. I admit that. But so it's relative, but I was right. It's relative motion in relationship to a fixed point, which we're considering the sun. So these other examples you're using, we're seeing is coming towards the Earth, right? It presupposes a heliocentric model. The Earth is at the center, and these other stars are moving towards or away, redshift or blue shifting, away or towards the sun at that speed. And for Polaris, it is there. I found it. Is 17 kilometers per second.
Yeah. I just wish they would integrate it into the model every so often.
I'd have to
if
look.
You want to, yeah, if you'd because the other models that I showed, which are the more common ones that they show up on YouTube or Google when you search, how does the North Star stay where it does, are based on a Copernican model. They do not account for the sun's motion. You could say you just can't see the motion because it's got to go really far, but it does not account for the motion. So they should have some model, and hopefully they come up with one, but
Well, let's fast forward to 2023, where we've tested the theory of relativity, general special relativity. So the models for the solar system and the galaxy are based upon those theories now, and our understanding of the universe based, even though there's problems with those, with dark energy and dark matter, which is a whole another debate. But so it's not based on the Copernicus model anymore. It's, even though that's like how the history began through Copernicus and Galileo and Kepler. I can't remember them all, but basically Einsteinian's theory of relativity.
Yeah, well, technically those models were probably closer to a geocentric model than they are a heliocentric model. Copernicus's sun was only 3 million miles away. Kepler's was like 12 million miles away. Distance-wise, that's much closer to where a geocentric sun would be than 93 million miles away.
Kepler.
So,
how far did Kepler calculate the sun away? I don't know. I'd have to look. That doesn't sound right. 137 million kilometers, whatever he calculated it as.
I'm pretty sure it was like around over 12 million miles, basically. But either way, those models are nothing like the modern heliocentric model. They didn't account for the motion of the sun. They thought the sun was stationary. So the model, that's three totally different models. You got the modern heliocentric model. You got
because
the Copernican,
it's not.
Yeah.
Well, just to backtrack, it's really not. The universe doesn't rotate around the sun. So even calling it the heliocentric model is inaccurate. Even calling it like a universe-centric model, like, we don't know where the borders of the universe is. We don't even know if the universe is a closed or open system. Like, our best theories are that it's a closed system, and matter is eternal, mass and energy, or matter and energy is eternal in some way. Like, or it came about through some other physical process. Our best hypotheses, like, actually, we really don't know what happened before expansion began. Everything is sort of theoretical physics, right? We don't even like get into the expansion point is based upon math. Like, all we can see is like the cosmic background radiation, which we predicted based upon expansionary universe. But so to even call it heliocentric model is sort of a misnomer because everything rotates around the center. Well, if it rotates around the center of the universe, like I don't know, like we know space expands faster than light.
According to the heliocentric model, yeah, there's a big galactic center that everything should rotate around within that model.
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know.
That's what they say. Yeah. So, I mean, I do have, few other examples that poke holes in the heliocentric model.
Well, I do have another question. Like,
yeah.
So you showed, okay, so you said like the curve calculator, 8 inches per mile squared. We do understand that's like was it like a 15% error at 1,000 miles? So it's not very accurate at long distances.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I absolutely agree with that.
So it's fine at close distances.
Yeah, but all the experiments on my page are well below that.
What experiment did you do it at 1,000 miles? Just curious.
No, none. That's what I'm saying is none of the experiments on the page exceed that. So the calculation being used to determine the rate of drop is accurate because they're all, anywhere from, there's some as short as 3 miles going all the way up to, I don't know. I'd have to watch back through them, but they go up, a few hundred miles basically.
But why would you use that calculator when you know it's wrong and there's a accurate calculator?
If it's wrong, why do all Earth curvature calculators use it? That makes no sense.
They don't. The Earth curve calculator you showed does not use that formula.
I showed 2 of them.
You did? The one you showed? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, nope. Yeah. It's not exact. I didn't use 8 inch. Well, I don't use 8 inches per mile squared as my formula. I use the Earth curvature calculator.
Yeah,
you're trying to debunk.
No, you're right. The Earth curve calculator you use is correct. It doesn't use the 8 inches per mile squared.
No, it's got few more decimal points in it, but it's fairly similar.
No,
and well, you can do the math on paper, type in 8 inches per mile squared for a 5-mile distance. It's still going to give you 16 miles. And when you punch it into the Earth curvature calculator, it's going to give you 16 miles. If you do 200 miles squared times 8 inches, and then you type it into the Earth curvature calculator, they're going to be off by a few decimal points, but it's basically, but I don't use 8 inches per mile squared. I use an Earth curvature calculator.
Which is correct.
Are those incorrect? Are those wrong?
Those are correct, but they don't use the 8 inches per mile squared.
And that's fine. We don't need to use that. We can just use an Earth curvature calculator.
Okay, use those. Yeah.
Yeah, they're much easier, and they verify those rates of drop that are contained in the experiments. They're based on an Earth curvature calculator. Okay. Unless someone's saying everyone who made Earth curvature calculators is lying, they're all in cahoots and they made up a false formula to help the flat earthers. But I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But
well, it's based on, it's an approximation, right? Because we based upon, yeah. So it's
because yeah.
So we agree it's close enough to as an approximation to use the Earth curve calculator. I agree. So, but it's only going to really tell. It's like if you're talking about level surfaces, it works. But if you're talking about even roads or mountains or hills or even plains, it's not going to work very well to tell you what the drop is going to be across a plane. Even if it appears flat, it still has ridges, up and valleys, and up and downs just because of the terrain of the Earth.
Yeah, that's where you got to take into account elevation and whatnot and everything else. Which that series of laser experiments, man, they went all out. I mean, they even factored in humidity and they put in the expected rate of refraction into their calculation. So not only did they take the rate of drop, but they took the exact weather conditions for that day, and they also factor in because each laser has a variable amount of refraction that it can produce as well, and they factor that in as well. So it's pretty incredible. I mean, everyone talks about that $20,000 gyroscope, but I mean, these guys developed a $20,000 GPS guided laser system that's, I mean, it demonstrates that the curvature does not exist,
But it proves space is real and satellites exist.
No, I understand, and I knew that was going to come up because I'm using global positioning system, right? That must mean that I believe in satellites, but all your phones
and gravity.
Well, all your phones and all your technology that I'm using on a daily basis connects to a ground-based tower for my positioning. It doesn't go direct to a satellite. Nobody's cell phone is going straight to a satellite. It's going to a ground-based tower. That's how you're triangulating your position, just like they did in the 1940s before satellites even existed, right? Before they're alleged to exist, you know?
Yeah, you saw my debate with Iron Horse where I talked about GPS. So I use it for work. Like,
yeah, and again, we
no
could dive into.
towers.
Yeah, I was trying to understand that a little better, but it's one of those things where I can't do your work. I can't verify what signal you're receiving or why that calculation should work or not, because I'm not in your field. I'm not there with you. It's unverifiable, just like the ISS is unverifiable to me. I don't have a space station. I don't have a rocket ship. I can't fly up there. But what I can do is test the convexity of the Earth's surface. I can use a digital gyroscope to test for pitch. I can use a high-powered laser to test if there's any convexity, if we can see it. We can look at mountain ranges with infrared zoom lenses that should not be visible anymore, and they are visible. I mean, there's just so many things on the page that verify that the curve doesn't exist. And, the other stuff, as far as with your work, it's like, I don't have a way to test that. So I can only go off of what I personally can test, you know? And like I said, there are signals that could be coming from ground-based towers as well that could be interpreted as a satellite signal. I mean, even right now, you're thinking GPS is because of satellites, but GPS is very well known to be based on ground-based towers. Anyone
No,
can look it up. Anyone can look it up on YouTube. How does my cell phone, know where I am, and they'll show you.
how can we use it on Super Hornets in the middle of the ocean? There are no towers.
There's towers in the ocean.
No,
They've built
all across there are not towers all
all
across
across
the
the ocean.
ocean
No, not all
for the
across.
GPS to work to tell our planes and ships exactly where they are.
Well, they drop out in the southern hemisphere, from my understanding, in a lot of places. So
Uh,
it's not like they cover every bit of the ocean. And you would kind of think that if it's satellites, every square inch of the ocean would be covered, but
no,
it's not.
it depends on where they're located, geostationary.
Yeah.
If there's not satellites needed for that stretch of water, I think everything is covered. I'd have to look to verify that or not. But so before we had GPS, we had to use things like TACAN, which was like we had a tower that was transmitting a signal with a name like a digital part of it. I think I can't. It's been a long time since I worked on TACAN, tactical navigation. So and the aircraft had antennas, and it could only tell them the direction the TACAN was in. So they could go. There's like a story like a plane that was going 180 degrees away from the TACAN, thinking they were going through that tower, but they were actually flying away from it until it disappeared, and then they ran out of fuel. Anyways, so they made better systems, so they were more accurate. And until I remember when we transitioned from INS and TACAN, we still left them there as redundant systems on the planes, but we added GPS, but we didn't add towers all across the ocean. I was in the Navy, all across the world, man. We don't. There's no towers out there. Like they're not there. Like I've never seen them. Maybe in some places close to shore or something there are, but like in the middle of the ocean, I don't see towers. But GPS works.
Yeah, I have seen examples of towers in the ocean, and I've also seen that when planes get their coordinates, because I watched this a few months ago, that there's actually a ping that comes from ground-based towers to tell them where they're located.
It's
If you look up,
TACAN.
yeah, but that's what when I looked it up, even just I think it was 4 or 5 months ago, same thing. That's the most modern way that planes, because I was looking up how do planes know where they're located, and
GPS.
yeah, but it's based on towers that send a ping to them as they're flying over certain areas.
That's TACAN. That's different. So it's a backup system to GPS. So planes
why
have
would they?
TACAN, INS, GPS to have redundancy, because if one system fails, they can still navigate back home.
So, but why would the video not say that they're using satellites? Why would they say they're using towers to locate where their position is?
Well,
It just,
I don't know. Like older
yeah,
planes probably still just use TACAN. If
yeah,
you
this was
haven't
from,
retrofitted the plane, depends on the plane. The older planes that may never retrofitted to put GPS in. I don't know, but they still have TACAN in place. They still have towers and transponders and stuff on the air traffic controller towers for that. As far as I know, they do. It's been decades since I worked on it, but it's a backup system.
yeah, see, this video was talking about modern commercial flights, and it wasn't speaking of it as a backup system, and it didn't even reference satellites. It only said that planes, when they're flying over locations, they get pings from various towers alerting them when they've reached a different, particular area of airspace and whatnot.
Well,
So.
that's different too. That's communication stuff. But when I'm talking about TACAN, it's just a ping. It tells the direction, the azimuth of the tower they're flying to. It doesn't tell them their elevation. They have altimeters and stuff like that. Like you're talking about your elevation too. Like most of the elevation devices, like if it's radar altimeter, it bounces off the ground. But things like atmospheric altimeters and stuff like that rely upon the pressure gradient of the Earth to determine your
Barometric reading.
elevation.
Yeah, the barometric reading. That's how they generally do elevation,
Yeah, and
air pressure.
a closed system, the air pressure equalizes. It's the laws, the thermodynamics in the system we have, where you have a vacuum of space is the container. You get this pressure gradient because the gravity is different. So it's gravity that holds us in container. As we get further away from the center of the Earth, the gravity is less, so the atmospheric density is lower. That's how those altimeters work, is they can detect how far away we are from the center of the mass of the Earth based upon that. So when you talk about measuring altitude, that's how you're doing it.
It's based on barometric pressure. It is
Yep.
not based on gravity in the center of the Earth.
Yep.
Anyone can look up how airplanes determine their altitude, and it has nothing to do with gravity. It has to do with barometric
Absolutely.
pressure.
I know. Explain
yeah.
barometric pressure.
It's essentially the atmosphere has varying levels of pressure to it. So
Why?
this thing, and this is my layman's terminology, my best understanding of it. I'm obviously not going to give the best explanation, but there's essentially pressure layers within our atmosphere. It gets less dense as you go higher, gets more dense as you go lower. In some areas that alters a bit, but the way that reads is how much pressure it's putting on this reading device, which is the altimeter, or what do you call it again? Forget the name of it. That reads I think it's an altimeter.
It's altimeter.
Yeah, and that's what reads the barometric pressure. So that's my best layman's explanation for what it is,
Yeah, but what's causing the pressure gradient? And it's gradual too. It's not like it jumps. Like it's a gradual decrease as you go away from the center of the Earth, which is explained by gravity, by science. That's how it's explained.
If it's explained by science, then I could throw the same question back at you and say, what experiment or what demonstration can you show me where pressurized gas can exist next to a vacuum without a barrier?
The Earth, we have it. A cup.
Well, that's a convenient answer, but I mean, like,
you take a cup, you put and heavy gases in the cup. So I mean, the pressure will be the same inside and outside the cup.
Vacuum. That's not a vacuum. I'm saying take a vacuum chamber and show me within the vacuum chamber how pressurized gas doesn't,
It equalizes in the chamber, except for gravity, because it's a little bit less dense at the top of the container than it is at the bottom of the container because of gravity. And when you flip it over, it does it. But
it
that's in bigger
containers. It doesn't stay a layered pressurized system.
Yeah, it's still layered because of gravity, but it's overcome because of the pressure of the container itself. If you have it at atmospheric pressure, say like you build a 100-foot tall pressurized container and it's at atmospheric pressure, the pressure gradient in the container is going to match the pressure gradient on the outside of the container, right? If you add pressure above atmospheric pressure, you're still going to get that pressure gradient because of the vacuum that's still pulling the gas down. So you're still going to get that pressure gradient in the container. It's just probably, I haven't done it before. Like I have read about it. It will be less noticeable, I think, because of the pressure in the container compared to the pressure being caused by gravity.
That's still using a container to keep the pressurized gas. What happens when you open the container to the vacuum? It's going to equalize.
Yeah.
It's not going to stay.
It does. It does equalize.
Yeah.
The pressure in the earth equalizes. So it goes up to vacuum toward whatever that value is, which is
11.
Yeah, so it goes up to that. So it does equalize at that point. And we do gas a little bit, and we do sweep around the solar system and pick up gas, but it does equalize.
Yeah, I mean, if at some point maybe I could see an experiment where they do have a vacuum anywhere near. Well, I don't even think we can simulate like 11 torr or whatever it is, but even
I'm
like
not
a
sure.
lesser vacuum next to where it can stay pressurized, next to a vacuum. There's no experiment that I.
Yeah, because we won't have a force pulling the gas down. The Earth does that, so we'd have to like go to the moon, I guess. I don't know. Well, the moon wouldn't work either. It has its own pressure gradient, so you'd have to go to space with some massive thing and some finely tuned device to measure pressure gradient, but where the mass of the item there had enough gravity to collect gas, and then where you can measure it, or you could just go to space and do it. They can measure the pressure in space. They can measure the pressure on Earth. They can measure the atmospheric pressure on the moon. I mean, we can measure the atmospheric pressure on Mars, and it's all predicted based upon the mass of the planets to determine what the pressure is, the amount of gas there is available, the mass of the planet, gravity of the planet. You can predict the atmospheric pressure and then go test it, right?
And just as easily as we can demonstrate that in a container, denser gases fall and lighter gases rise. It could be just as easy as that, correct?
Well, that's because of gravity, because denser material has more mass per volume. Right?
Gravity is just space-time bending around an object, right? Of mass?
No. Gravity is the bending of, well, if you want to think of it that way, like the fabric of space-time is bending. It's not like objects are bending like into, right? But I'm not a cosmologist either. I'm not an expert in physics, but it is where two masses are coming together due to the curvature of space-time. Sure, that's our best theory.
All right.
I mean, I guess if space-time is, or sorry, you want to talk?
Yeah, I was just going to inject and just check in with you guys. I don't want you to lose track of what you're talking about. I think we're having a really nice conversation, and I want to remind the people in the live chat that we got two really nice gentlemen here today having a conversation. So just keep your live chats friendly. We're going to move into Q&A here shortly, I imagine. I just wanted to check in on you guys to see how you're both doing for time.
I'm cool on time.
I'm good. Whenever you want to do Q&A, or we can go a few more minutes. I mean, you can ask me, I mean, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we can keep talking for a little bit if you'd like. We can go for another 10 to 15 of open dialogue if you guys feel you have enough on the plate. Sure. And then we'll move into our Q&A, which will probably keep us busy for a while too. So, all right, we'll kick it back to open discussion, and reminder to our live chat that both our guests are linked in the description. So I'll kick it back to them, and thank you so much, everybody.
If I could share another example against the heliocentric model,
sure.
It's based on Selenelian eclipses. So I'm going to share that. And I've heard that example. Let me okay, so here is the definition of a Selenelian eclipse, right? So let me define it for the audience. A Selenelian eclipse is when the sun and the moon are both observed over the Earth's horizon. So in a heliocentric model, the way a lunar eclipse happens is that the globe model Earth casts its shadow on the moon. Now, the other thing is that an eclipse can only happen let me see if I can get this annotation up here, if it'll let me. I guess not. Oh, did that close out on you guys?
Yes.
So sorry. Now, so I can't really annotate, but what's interesting is even in this image, like you brought up, Ozien, about refraction, notice where the position they show on this image is. The sun and the moon should be 180 degrees around the globe model Earth from each other for an eclipse to happen. Even in their explanation of this selenelian eclipse, they're out of position. This is how they show you an eclipse should occur, according to the heliocentric model. Yet when they show you the selenelian, even when it's supposedly due to refraction, they're still out of position in that image. Like it says right here,
No.
a lunar eclipse can only happen during a full moon when the sun and moon are on opposite sides of the Earth from each other. So this shows you a moon phase right here. You can see that the full moon or a lunar eclipse has to be on the complete opposite side of the Earth from the sun. Yet in the selenelian image, they're not. And we have visual proof from this guy in 2014 who recorded a selenelian eclipse right here, where both the sun and the moon are above the horizon, making it impossible for the shadow of the Earth to be cast on it. This too is another image of a regular eclipse. This is the, again, another lunar eclipse where, look, the shadow is actually on the wrong side of the Earth. That happened, or on the moon. See this moon right here from the selenelian eclipse? Not only are they both above the horizon, which defies the positions that they're supposed to be according to the heliocentric model, how on earth did the shadow flip itself over?
It didn't. So you have this, you have two things going on with that one. So you have the part of the penumbra of the Earth is blocking the moon, right? And then you have light that's refracting through the atmosphere and hitting the bottom of the moon. So it's a unique condition. And also with a selenelian eclipse, it's not 180 degrees apart. That's why it's sort of a unique type of eclipse, right? That's why they call it what they do, right? If it's 180 degrees behind us, it would be obscured by the Earth. So it is a different type of eclipse.
No, the definition of a selenelian eclipse is they do have to be opposite sides of the Earth. The only
They
way
are.
So
in your
you're
example, they were opposite of each other. They weren't 180 degrees opposite of each other.
But here's why refraction doesn't explain that. Are selenelian eclipses predictable? Are they cyclical?
I'd have to look.
They call out selenelian eclipses before they occur. So
Okay.
how are they predicting the Earth's atmosphere cyclically? You're saying every time this thing rotates through, whether it's every 50 years or 100 years or 20 years, they're cyclical. How does the atmosphere happen to just pull the sun 180 degrees around the Earth every single time they happen to be in that position? We can predict them before we know the weather. We only know the weather a few weeks out, you know?
It's not 180 degrees, and it's not the weather that the atmosphere is predictable. It remains constant. Like weather patterns are sort of local. We're not talking about the atmosphere, like, close into the Earth, right? So they are opposite sides of each other. And it is where that part of the light is refracting through the atmosphere and hitting the bottom of the moon.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's the explanation. It's explained by that model. They have an explanation, we agree. And the explanation is explained by that.
The explanation shows this, where they're not 180 degrees.
Correct. It doesn't say 180 degrees.
It has
says opposites. It says opposite sides.
180 degrees around.
Where does it say 180 degrees?
Look right here. Lunar eclipses can only happen during a full moon. Where does a full moon have to be? In proximity to the sun in the heliocentric model.
The full moon just has to be not blocked by the Earth.
The full moon has to
be... Or it has to be totally exposed by the sun.
It has to be 100. The moon phases work in the heliocentric model like hands on a clock. Each phase is like hands on a clock. The full moon has to be 180 degrees. If you're arguing a different model, I can go with you on that. But if we're arguing the modern heliocentric model, a full moon can only occur 180 degrees away from the sun around the globe model Earth. It's the only position that it can have. That's its own definition. If you're making a new definition, that's a different model. That's not the modern heliocentric model. That's an entirely different model.
It doesn't say right there 180 degrees around the Earth. It just says
no, it says during
opposite
a full
sides
moon.
of the Earth. Yes. Right. So the full moon just means the entire side of the moon is being lit up by the sun, right?
No, it means it's on the opposite side of it. It's
Means
100.
it means we can see the sun lighting up the moon, the whole moon.
No, it's the position of the moon. They tell you the reflection. They tell you the phases of the moon are this.
Mhm.
This is the positions. They
But
have to be in these positions.
That's an example, right?
No, you can look up any child's explanation. You can type in how do the phases of the moon work.
Child's explanation.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched all of them. The moon is the first thing that got me into this subject, and I'm absolutely positive that no astronomer would agree with you that in the heliocentric model, that the full moon can be anywhere but 180 degrees around the Earth. When it's at full illumination, 100% illumination, it's like hands on a clock. When it's a first quarter moon, it's 90 degrees away from the sun. When it's a third quarter moon, it's 90 degrees away from the sun. When it's a new moon, it's directly in front of the sun. This is how the model has to operate according to its own laws. If you're saying it doesn't have to operate like that, then that's a different model.
No.
Yeah. Ask an astronomer, go check. After this debate, go ask an astronomer if a full moon can be anywhere but 180 degrees around the Earth. Now, there is a 5-degree tilt that happens around the ecliptic plane, but that's a 5-degree tilt up above the ecliptic plane or below it. But its position is still 180 degrees around the globe model Earth.
When they're perfectly lined up, we get a lunar eclipse, right?
Yes.
So if it's perfectly 180 degrees away from the sun around the Earth, we wouldn't see the moon. It'd be a perfect lunar eclipse.
No, that's where the 5-degree tilt comes in, which explains the umbra and the penumbra. The 5-degree tilt explains why there isn't full lunar eclipse every time the moon moves to the other side of the globe model Earth. It's the umbra and the penumbra that explains that in that model, but the position does not change. It has to be by definition, if the moon is 100% at illumination, which is the only time an eclipse can occur according to the heliocentric model, they have to be 180 degrees around the globe model Earth, but they can have a 5-degree tilt below or above the ecliptic plane or elliptic plane.
If the moon was perfectly 180 degrees on the other side of the Earth every time, why isn't there a lunar eclipse every time? But the lunar...
Exactly.
Because the moon is exposed to the sun during a full moon. So the lunar eclipse is when the moon
not according to your model.
Is eclipsed by the Earth. When it's directly 180 degrees, like sun's here, Earth is here, moon's here, right? So you get a full lunar eclipse. But you can go like this.
No, actually, according to the heliocentric model, the lunar eclipse occurs when it's directly behind the Earth from the sun. Now, the sun in that model is so massive that they say the light travels around it. I forgot that point they have. It's on that umbra and penumbra thing right here, let me go back to it. It's got it on the image right here. See, this is what it's saying. That's exactly how an eclipse that's the position of an eclipse. There is no other position for an eclipse. 180 degrees around.
For a lunar eclipse, not a Selenelian eclipse.
Selenelian eclipse is a lunar eclipse.
Okay. Is it?
Yeah.
What's the difference between a Selenelian eclipse and lunar eclipse? Whatever. Rising 77 visible at the same time. A stellar is a special lunar eclipse where both the sun and the eclipsed moon are visible in the sky at the same time. So they're not the same.
Exactly, but they have to be by definition. It's at full moon stage. It's at its full moon phase when a selenelian
It's 100. It's on 180 degrees on the other side of the Earth, right behind the Earth. But
that's what they're saying.
But we can see the light that's shining on to the moon.
In this case, we're seeing sun.
In this case, we're seeing the light that's refracting through the atmosphere hitting the bottom of the moon.
So how is the shadow of the Earth flipped upside down? How is it on top of the moon?
Because it's occluded by the Earth, by the shadow of the Earth. But you get refraction.
But you can see the Earth. The Earth should be setting the shadow on the bottom of the moon.
So you got light shining in straight lines around the Earth. Part of that light is hitting the atmosphere, and that part of the light that hits the atmosphere is getting curved around and hitting the moon, the bottom of the moon.
Flipping the shadow and bypassing the bottom of the moon and sending it up to the top of the moon.
It's not flipping the shadow. That curve looks like this on the top of the moon. It doesn't look like
this. This is a normal eclipse then.
Yeah. Well, it's not a partial eclipse, yeah.
Yeah, a partial eclipse. And where's the shadow? It's on the bottom.
So in that picture right there, the moon is not perfectly 180 degrees behind the Earth, even though it's a full moon. You can still see
sunlight. You can see it's like dusk or dawn.
Yeah, even though it's a full moon, right? But part of the moon is eclipsed by the Earth.
Well, then I have a question.
And the shadow...
Do you believe the full moon has to be 180 degrees around the Earth from the sun, like full moon phase?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, well, I have an example where I personally recorded the full moon and the sun above my visible horizon. Or technically it's a few degrees off, but if you want to check that out, like here's another.
I mean, it's irrelevant. You're not describing the model that they're explaining it is, right? So it is explained by the model that we have for the solar system, right? Like they have an explanation for it based upon the physics of our solar system, right?
Yeah, but the image doesn't match their model. It's just like when they modeled Polaris and they show a Copernican model, because it can't be.
The image does match the model. Like we are getting what we expect. Like you're showing a picture, like that's not what the universe looks like. That's not what the solar system looks like. Okay.
The moon appears full to the eye for 2 to 3 hours. So it says right here, when the moon is exactly 100 degrees opposite the sun, at full moon, the sun, the Earth, and the moon are aligned in space with the Earth in the middle.
So what's an ecliptic longitude?
So here's my
ecliptic longitude is a celestial longitude measures the angular distance of an object along the ecliptic from the primary. So it's based upon the location of the sun and the moon.
Have to, by definition, be 100. The only way you can have any type of eclipse is when the moon is at its full moon phase. There's no other, if you can find a definition where it's not at its full moon phase, and by definition, a full moon has to be 180 degrees around the Earth.
Around the ecliptic of the Earth.
Well, from the sun. From the sun. Yeah. The sun's
on the Earth, not the Earth longitude, the ecliptic longitude.
The longitude has very little to do with what its position is supposed to be. I mean, there's a measurable longitude, of course, but what I'm saying is by its own definition, the heliocentric model requires those positions. Here's a Is there any audio on that?
So the celestial equator is tilted compared to the Earth equator. Right, because the Earth is tilted. So when they're talking the celestial equator, the ecliptic, they're talking about the celestial equator.
Yes. but that
plane
doesn't
of the
change. Yeah, and
No.
the sun's on the opposite side of the moon from them.
on the celestial equator. Correct. So it doesn't mean the moon is perfectly behind the sun.
No, it means the moon is behind the Earth and it has a 5-degree tilt
Means it's
north or
on
south of the plane.
Means it's on the opposite side of the earth.
Yeah, from the sun.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And that
again,
explains what we see.
that doesn't how when both are above the horizon. The sun can be
Yeah.
physically seen above the horizon
So
with the moon. They
yeah.
can't be on opposite sides of the Earth.
So if we're like this, right? So and the Earth is tilted like this, and the moon is rotating. I'm not a friggin' orbital mechanic. Oh, okay. That's okay. But if you just consider the rotation of the Earth or the moon around the Earth and the angle, the axes of the Earth in relationship to the sun and the moon, you can have the moon exposed to the sun, right, and be behind the Earth.
But that's way more than 5 degrees above the Earth. It doesn't rise above the Earth with that 5-degree tilt.
I'd have to see what.
It can only. Okay, so all I'm saying is, how would I best put this? So they have to be opposite sides of the globe model Earth, the sun and the moon. They have to be. There's only a 5-degree variance which controls whether the moon is in an eclipse or it's not in an eclipse. Okay, that's the
5 degrees.
umbra and the penumbra, depending on where it is in the heliocentric model according to the ecliptic plane. The Selenelian eclipse has both bodies above the visible horizon, and they are out of position at that point. And not only that, the shadow is on the wrong side of the moon. It should be on the bottom, like in that other eclipse image. It has to be on the bottom of the moon.
That's why it's a Selenelian eclipse.
Exactly. That's the name they give it, because they go, hey, this is a weird phenomena. And when you really examine it, it doesn't work within the heliocentric model. Same thing as when the moon and the sun have to be opposite each other during a full moon phase. But I've recorded that phenomena 8-9 times where it's at full illumination or maybe 98% illumination, and both are well above the horizon from my vantage point in Southern California. That means they, by definition, cannot be 180 degrees around the Earth.
No, you showed a picture where they were 180 degrees around the Earth from each other. The one where where the sun, so you had the Earth and you had the sun and the moon here, and the person sees them up here because of refraction, pulling them up. So it looks like they're higher in the sky than they actually are because of refraction, right? You showed that image that explains. And in that image, they are 180 degrees apart from each other on this celestial eclipse or the celestial ecliptical, which is the sun's ecliptical. The moon's on the other side of the Earth from the sun. On that picture right there.
Yeah, here's that image. Those objects are not 180 degrees around that Earth from each other.
Yes, they are.
Draw a line straight from the sun straight to the moon, and you tell me if that's through the center of the Earth.
It doesn't have to go through the center of the Earth to be 180 degrees from each other around the ecliptical of the solar system. It's not the ecliptic. Yeah, that's 100. That's a line that's 180 degrees. Those 2 points are 180 degrees apart from each other.
You think the center of the Earth is in that line?
No, it doesn't go through the center of the Earth. That's not what they're saying. They're on opposite sides of each other.
Then you're not understanding the definition. The definition I do understand says this sun should be 180 degrees.
No, it doesn't.
Straight line from that to that.
You read the definition was the ecliptical orbit, right? The ecliptical orbit was a word, which is the solar orbit, not the Earth's, or the solar plane, not the Earth. So it's the ecliptical orbit, not based upon the center of the Earth.
But the definition is
ecliptic longitude, which is based upon the sun.
Look, when the moon and sun are on opposite sides of the Earth.
Yes, which they are in that picture. They are in that picture. They're on opposite sides of each other in that picture.
Opposites meaning 180 degrees.
One's on the west side, one's on the east side, however you want to.
Yeah, that's not what it's saying. It's degrees around the Earth. This right here.
It's based
this is
upon
where it can't see how this line goes
Mhm.
straight. You see how that line goes straight from the sun to the full moon,
Yeah.
straight across it for it to be a full moon phase,
No,
basically.
it's not though. But
In
anyways,
that picture, the moon would be up here.
no,
You're
the
getting
sun
a
is
line that's cutting across part of the Earth.
no, the sun isn't that close. Like this is not a good drawing to use to determine where the line, the celestial equator is. So when it said the ecliptic longitude, ecliptic was the word it used. It's talking about the celestial equator. It's talking about the sun's ecliptic, not the Earth's. So seeing what's on the opposite side of this.
The moon is on the Earth's ecliptic plane. According to the heliocentric model, the moon does not exist on the sun's ecliptic plane. It exists on the Earth's ecliptic plane.
Okay, so but when you showed the one example you showed was talking about the ecliptic longitude, which is talking about the celestial coordinate system, not the Earth. Is talking about the sun's. But anyways, I think we beat this dead, but Ryan's not there.
I mean, I got more examples.
And I'm not an expert on that either. The only thing I know is how the sun's being refracted through the atmosphere is why you get that shadow on the bottom. So, but
okay, I have a question for you then.
Sure. One last question, then we can go to Q&A.
Yeah. So the last question I have is imagine a heat source in front of you, whether it's a massive fire, an oil fire, a giant heat ray that doesn't exist, whatever you want. Just logically, if that heat source is directly in front of me, what's going to increase the amount of heat in your opinion? If I lean my head slightly towards that heat force, or if I take a step or two towards it?
The distance to the heat source is going to determine how much radiant heat affects you, as long as there's no atmospheric conditions that is affecting the amount of heat you're going to experience, or there's something the medium in between you isn't affecting that convection of heat. But yeah, the closer you get, the hotter it will be.
Yeah, so we both agree on that, right? Like slightly tilting my head towards a heat source isn't going to affect the temperature as greatly as if I physically move closer to that heat source, right?
Depends on the medium. If there's any medium like atmosphere or something like that.
But in general, you would assume that if there's a big fire in front of me, if I tilt my head towards it, it's not going to increase the heat as much as if I actually step towards it. Correct?
But if I put a blanket in between me and I get closer to it, it gets cooler. There's a blanket. So if I take the blanket away, it gets hotter. But if I step 2 feet closer, put a blanket in between me and the heat source, the blanket collects the radiant heat. I don't feel it because the blanket's blocking the heat, even though I've gotten closer to the heat source.
Okay.
Right?
But I'm just saying,
saying.
If there's no blanket there, we can safely assume that the closer, unless there's something blocking the heat source, which would also block if I tilt my head or I step towards it, it's going to block either motion. But in general, if there's nothing blocking or obstructing the heat source, then if I take steps towards that heat source, it's going to be a greater increase in heat than if I just tilt my head towards it, right?
But if you're moving the atmosphere with you, that they feel that radiant heat, if you're moving your atmosphere, like you have a localized atmosphere as a human and you're stepping towards it and you're moving the whole localized atmosphere closer to it or away from it, the whole atmosphere has to heat up at that period, in that period of time, right? For you to experience the increased heat where you are. So yes, I tend to agree. If that object is closer to the heat source, it's going to experience more radiant heat.
Yeah. So in general, if we're closer to a heat source, it's going to do more than tilting towards it. This is the explanation.
No, it depends. If there's atmosphere, if there's less atmosphere between you and the heat source, you're going to experience more of the heat source.
Well, here's an example from the heliocentric model that doesn't make much sense. They tell you that the tilt of the Earth is what changes the seasons, so a slight tilt. But when it's 3 million miles closer during perihelion, it has almost no bearing on the temperature whatsoever. So the slight tilt, which is very minimal in comparison to moving 3 million miles closer or 3 million miles further away, has almost no look. When it's closer to the sun, during perihelion in January, the northern hemisphere gets colder, right? That's what it's showing you, even though it's 3 million miles closer than aphelion when it's supposedly hotter. So how come when it's 3 million miles closer, it gets hotter in the southern hemisphere when it's 3 million miles closer than when it's 3 million miles further away?
So there's lots of factors involved, but you have more water in the southern hemisphere, so you have more effects when it's really related to that. But in general, the normal northern hemisphere is 1.5 degrees Celsius higher than the southern hemisphere. So it's about 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in the northern hemisphere than in the southern hemisphere.
We're talking if the slight tilt of the Earth is going to change the seasons, 3 million miles closer or further should drastically change the temperature on Earth.
That's because you have more blanket blocking the heat source, which is the atmosphere, more blanket blocking the heat source. So that's
I don't see a blanket in this. Why is there more atmosphere suddenly when the
light has to shine through more atmosphere, and you get less sun exposure because of that, because of the tilt of the Earth, because of the season when it's going around the moon or the Earth. You get less sun exposure during the day. Your days are shorter, so the heat rise during the peak of the day is going to be less. So as what's the word to use? Like the Earth absorbs heat during the day and it releases it at night, right? There's a word for that. And you have it's like a pumping action or something like that. And it's actually like under the ground, the permafrost, or like under the Earth, it'll hold the heat longer, and it takes longer during the winter for the ground to get cool, even though the atmosphere gets warmer and hotter a lot more dramatically than the Earth does itself, right? So that's because of the convection of the heat into the Earth, and the Earth stores heat. But it is because of the atmosphere. You get less sunlight exposure, and the sun is coming in at a much different angle, so you're going to have a less heat from that also.
So
and it is warmer in the northern hemisphere, 1.5 degrees C, like 3 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, well, like I said, if the gradual tilt completely changes the seasons to where snow is coming down in one season and then it's brutally hot in the next season, just from the tilt, it makes absolutely zero sense to say, well, there's enough atmosphere when it moves 3 million miles closer or 3 million miles away to negate the extreme temperature difference. That's like me saying, oh, there's a big fire in front of me, but if I spray a little mist in front of me after I've walked 3 steps closer to that fire, it's going to prevent that heat from hitting me, as opposed to me just tilting my face towards the fire.
That's absolutely true. If you take a mist and put it between you and the fire, it will reduce the heat of the atmosphere between you and the fire. If you take a water hose and you spray
more than moving closer to it,
you take a waterfall, you put a burning, raging furnace on one side of the waterfall, and you're on the other side of the waterfall, you're going to feel the temperature of the waterfall because it's going to suck all the heat down and take it down. So yes, it depends on the amount of atmosphere, depends on the temperature of the atmosphere, it depends on the wind, all types of factors involved that impacts the amount of heat you experience. Most of it is because of the axial tilt, and you have less sun during the day, so you have less temperature rise, so the peak temperature doesn't get as hot. Another point is like the temperature of like the temperature in a vacuum exposed to the sun, because there's no atmosphere, is actually very, very hot, right? So that the atmosphere of the Earth actually is like a shield to protect us from the furnace of the sun.
And that's some pretty thick atmosphere to be able to compensate for 3 million miles closer to a heat source
Well,
on just at the top, opposed to the top of the ball to the bottom of the ball. Geez, that's incredibly thick. That's 3 million miles closer as opposed to a tilt, a mild tilt.
it absorbs heat from the sun during the day, and it releases heat. It releases the heat at night. So you get a flexing of temperature between day and night cycles in the atmosphere. You get a flexing a temperature between seasons and day and night cycles of the Earth too, like the ground.
Absolutely.
All right, let's
Absolutely.
let's get moving into our Q&A for now, and then we'll do like a 1 to 2 minute closer once we're done our Q&A. Yeah, just want to thank both of you gentlemen for coming out and having this discussion. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm sure we could keep it going. I kind of want to throw a little monkey wrench into our live chat. I know I was talking to you a little bit about it, Mike. There, what are both of your fellows' thoughts on the moon landing? Just throwing a monkey wrench out there.
Moon landing exists. It's conspiracy theory to deny it.
Yeah, I absolutely reject the moon landing for a multitude of reasons. I don't have the video content here, but if anyone pulls up the lunar rover, you can watch the footage of the lunar rover on YouTube. Pay attention to the driver's hand as he's holding the camera in the lunar rover. You'll notice that his arm keeps a 90-degree angle holding this camera the entire time he's driving around. You can tell it's a little model.
Well,
They're claiming they went to the moon and they could live stream video footage in 1969, live stream video footage with 1960s tech.
well,
but here we are.
I'm going to cut you off there, Mike. I'm so sorry. I don't want to
Yeah.
get into the meat of that discussion because I think it's something that you both made me aware you're interested in. So maybe we can talk a little bit after this. But I just thought that might be fun to throw that in there where we're talking about the Earth and space stuff. So let's go to our Q&A. And our first one we have here is Alabaka gave us 5,500 CLP. I'm not sure what the currency is. The comment is, a robotics/phone gyro is not accurate enough to pick up rotation. Bob's was. Same as all of the ones in geocentric labs around the world working 24/7. Why did they pick up that gyro for the experiment?
Chilean peso, by the way. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, like I said before, having to do with that gyroscope, I'm just really fascinated that nobody else has demoed Bob's gyroscope, that there's not a model number or any way to purchase that. I know that Ozien referenced using calibrating gyroscopes, but he was talking about recalibrating them, not picking up the motion of the Earth. So I would love to see other people other than someone on a hit piece from behind the curve having a gyroscope that can pick up the rotation of the Earth. That way other people could test it other than just Bob. Because as far as I can find on the internet, because I've looked quite a few times over since I saw that documentary in 2019 or something like that when it came out, there's no model number for it. You can't purchase it anywhere. Nobody else on the internet that I can find is seen using that gyroscope. And if they're thinking that my gyroscope experiment that I referenced in the beginning of the video had to do with rotation, it did not have to do with rotation. It had to do with pitch. It's the same type. It's the same basically gyroscope that's used in modern drone technology and robotics. It can pick up pitch and yaw and roll. It can pick up all those axes of motion. So driving 200 miles, it should be able to pick up its gradual pitch as it progresses over the curvature of the Earth. So that'll be my response.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Your old pal, Mike. And Tyler, 432, $5 at Ozien. How does everything blast through space, twisting and turning around the sun, when we can observe the sun inside the clouds on the daily?
I've never seen the sun inside the clouds. I've seen the sun through the clouds.
I actually agree with that too. I don't ascribe that the sun. I think when people are thinking in the flat Earth community that they're seeing the sun within the clouds, it's just brightly shining through the lighter parts of the cloud. So I tend to agree with you on that.
Awesome. Any last thoughts on that, Ozien, where that one was for you?
I just want to know how many suns there are. That'd be a good one. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Siggy Sigwald, $50 says, the stars we see with the naked eye are most likely within the Milky Way and moving with us around the center of the galaxy. This is so easy to visualize mentally that asking for a 3D model, which I'm sure you can find in one sec, makes no sense.
Well, I have looked for those 3D models, and I'm more than willing if someone wants to send it to me on my Flat Earth Archive page, they can direct message me that 3D model that takes it into account. But again, I showed with the North Star, when they do model it, it's more based on a Copernican model. The sun's motion isn't taken into account. But we could just as easily say, hey, when I look up, the Earth is even Albert Einstein acknowledged that he doesn't believe that there's any experiment that can actually detect the motion of the Earth. He admitted that himself. So you can just as easily look up at the sky and say, hey, all the celestial bodies are turning above us and we're stationary, as you can to say that we're turning around the sun. It's just as easily observable. So.
All right, awesome. And I'll let everybody know in the live chat. Yeah, I got the left ear sneak going on right now. I'm exporting in stereo, and my new interface. I bought a whole bunch of new gear to up the quality. If you haven't noticed, we're streaming in 1080 60p frames per second. Sorry, which is a lot better than what I had before. But there's a couple things that I need to get figured out still, of course, with this new system. So let me know in the live chat there. I'm trying to do what I can here with this stuff. Siggy Sigwell.
I just want to.
Go ahead.
He misquoted Einstein. Einstein said you cannot detect the Earth with an optical experiment. He didn't say you can't detect the motion of the Earth at all. He just said with an optical visual experiment.
Yeah, like the stars, using the stars as a reference for the Earth to be spinning. That's an optical observation. But you're absolutely correct.
All right. Siggy Sigwald for 666, the number of the beast. I'm sorry, it just triggers me with the Iron Maiden every time. My goodness, I got to keep it down though because the kids are trying to sleep. My God, don't do that to me. All right, Siggy Sigwald 666 says, someone please tell him the observable universe is huge, like 8.8 times 10 to the power 26 kilometers wide.
Yeah.
Well,
good.
I was just going to say that sounds more like a statement than a question. So, all right.
Well, it's a measurement based upon the angular size of the objects and in relationship, I think. Anyways.
I mean, I got a good experiment that a guy did with AutoCAD using the angles of the sunlight from provided from timeanddate.com. So it's accurate angles of the sun, and he breaks it down all in AutoCAD and shows that the sun can't be 93 million miles away. So perhaps some of those outdated measurements will get reconfigured here in the coming years as things change.
Well, my last interlocutor disagrees with you. He says if there was only one sun, it has to be 93 million miles away. So whatever. I'd be interested in seeing that in our Discord if you want to join the Modern Day Debate Discord.
I've never used Discord, so I'm kind of like old fogey on that. I don't even know.
We have a good flat Earth community. Most of them are pretty good and engaging. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have the Discord. It's been posted in the live chat, and I'm pretty sure we have it in our description as well. So yeah, you're welcome to check that out. Yeah, so we got a couple more super chats coming in. Awesome, everybody. We'll continue on. Cool Lambo, $5. Where do the rockets go?
There's some really good illustrations showing their trajectory dropping off in the Bermuda Triangle when they're sent off from Florida there. But you can see that the arch necessary on many of these rocket launches are not going into space. They say that that angle and that curve that you start to see is because they got to launch the rocket sort of at an angle, so it grabs onto gravity, and gravity sort of propels it around the outside of the spherical Earth or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you can see footage of it, images of it, where you can see the angle on the arc on those rockets really shouldn't be cruising way out into outer space as is claimed. But I do believe they build rockets, of course. I do believe NASA is lying about a great many things, but you can't embezzle that much money without creating some product. So I don't doubt that they do rocket launches. That's what's really interesting, though, that since the 1960s, when they first started space exploration, did you know that there's not one piece of time-lapse footage from the time a rocket leaves the Earth to the time it reaches space? Not one piece. You can pull up a time-lapse video of a cruise or a ship sailing around the ocean, and that camera will roll for 30 days straight. You can watch that footage, but there's not one time-lapse piece of, or just even raw footage of a rocket leaving Earth and entering space. The camera always cuts to a different camera, or it cuts out entirely. We don't ever have one single continuous feed in almost approaching a century now, really more like 75 years of alleged space travel. Why isn't there one piece of raw footage of a rocket leaving Earth going into space with the camera aimed at the Earth and it never turning off or never changing to a different camera? It's really odd, you know?
The friends I know that worked at Boeing and Northrop Grumman, that helped build rockets and planes and all that type of stuff, I don't think they're lying about the physics involved and the orbital mechanics involved. I think rockets, they work to get us into orbit. So, I think everything is just a big giant conspiracy theory because you believe it's true because of your religious beliefs, and that's not actually the case. Like, there's no reason to believe there's a giant conspiracy theory.
There's a lot of reason to believe that, but probably not time to go into that right now, I'd assume. So there's a lot.
Yeah, we definitely, like I said, we can arrange to have you gents back and have another conversation for sure. This has been fantastic. Siggy Sigwald, 666 again. I'm not going to be triggered with any more Iron Maiden because we don't want to get copyrighted or anything. I know I sing it so close to the guy. No, I'm kidding. All right, so Siggy Sigwald, thanks again for your support. The Flat Earther talking about eclipses explains why he needs a 3D model to understand star movement. Flat earthers can't understand 3D. Hail Sagan. Carl Sagan, I guess, yeah.
I guess I'm not really understanding what he's saying entirely. I mean, why would we need a 3D model? I mean, doesn't it help to have models of what we're describing? I don't see any lack of benefit to wanting something modeled. I don't see that as a negative. I see that as a positive, you know.
Well, the model just means we can predict it, and we can predict selenium eclipses, so it's modeled. Now, yeah, I think you're talking about like a computer-generated model. We can image it, and I don't know if there's anything like that. I played games that are like that. I play Elite Dangerous. I stream it, or used to stream it all the time. But anyways.
Well, I mean, they can predict those sets. Ancient cultures, I've read a bunch of papers on it, on how they used to predict eclipses and everything, how
Yeah.
it was information passed down over time, so they knew it was cyclical. Every 56 years this particular event would happen, every 25 years this particular event would happen. So there's zero need for modern heliocentrism to predict those events. You can do it just as easily without it. So it's kind of a misnomer to think you need it to predict those events, because you can do it without it, and ancient cultures have done it for centuries, prior to our model.
Yeah, it's just the explanatory power of the model has led us to other wonderful gadgets and stuff that we use today, like your cell phones, computers, internet, stuff like that. Well, the internet, maybe not as much as the model, but GPS relies upon theory of relativity to work. I know it does. All these type of things rely upon that model that we benefit from, including going to Mars and going to the moon and stuff like that. So you are correct that we could predict future events, but we didn't understand why. We usually said, well, it was some god or some supernatural entity that was causing everything to stay in motion. We've learned a lot since then. I hope you agree. We've learned a lot that we don't believe Thor is required for lightning, right? Stuff like that. Maybe you do believe there's some biblical reason for lightning. I don't know. And the gods needed there to sustain things. Probably do. But I think that's a different discussion. But I just want to say that the model benefits us in more ways than just being able to predict where the moon's going to be.
Yeah, I definitely believe we've come a long way as far as technology. And I think that's why you're seeing such a rise in people who question the shape of the earth, because now the common man has access to so many tools that they didn't have access to, even 100 years ago. And since we have such access to these mediums, I mean, we talk about conspiracy. I think it's a lot easier for a unified organization to lie to people than it is for a bunch of independent researchers who aren't affiliated with each other, testing these things from all different countries, different continents on the earth. I mean, they're not choreographed together. Why would they? It's easier to understand one unified organization having one narrative that could be a lie than it does thousands of independent researchers all over the earth testing the convexity of the earth's surface and coming to the conclusion that the curvature doesn't exist.
Including all the university and college students doing these tests all across the globe, proving the earth is a globe. They do it independently. They do it on their own. They do the Cavendish experiment. They do all these experiments to prove gravity, to prove the earth is curved. They can shoot lasers off the moon or signals off the moon. All communication theory with Skip and all that stuff, launch it, what do they call it, ground waves. It can go over mountains and go on the other side of mountains. I mean, all this stuff is explained by the model. And I don't think all those university and college students are part of some unified conspiracy. So you're talking about a subset, a small percentage of people that believe the earth is flat. Very few people believe the earth is flat. More people believe the earth is young than believe the earth is flat. Actually, it's sort of weird. But yeah, so I don't think there's a conspiracy. I don't think you're part of conspiracy. I don't think science is part of some weird giant conspiracy, because it's been individually verified by hundreds of millions of people that take these classes in university, that go out and do the experiments themselves.
I just think every few generations, we scrap the old model and we come up with a new one, so
expand it.
Yeah, or simply throw it away, like you would say about the flat earth model, in ancient times, right? You would say we threw that away for heliocentric models up to this point, I would imagine. So I just think with modern, the increase in numbers of people who do question the shape of the earth in modern heliocentrism is because of access to modern technology. And I don't believe universities are intentionally lying. I believe the heliocentric model does accurately predict certain celestial events. If it didn't, nobody would take it seriously. My argument is not that the heliocentric model can't describe certain things. My argument is that there are also major holes within that model. So why accept a model that clearly isn't correct?
Because they explain where the holes are. They tell you where we have issues with the model. Like, we don't have a unified theory of gravity, right? We don't. We've seemed to understand weak and strong nuclear force. We seem to understand electromagnetism, but gravity we still don't quite understand, right? We don't have a quantum theory of gravity. We don't have a unified theory of everything. So there's lots of black holes, but they tell you what they are. They admit it. They say, we think we understand this. We have this one thing that we can't explain, and we're going to put a placeholder in place, like the dark energy and dark matter, to explain theory of relativity until we can determine what it is. And there's research involved in that. So it's not. So they're honest about what they don't know. It's not like they're not making stuff up out of thin air. They're saying this is what we can explain, this is what we can't.
Yeah, and there's evidently a lot they can explain. Because I have this quote from Michio Kaku, that's a astrophysicist.
The string theory guy.
Yeah, let me show you. Can you guys see that?
Oh,
The
I don't
screen
know
right
who
there?
that is.
It's up now.
Oh yeah, him. Yeah, the
Yeah,
string theory guy.
Let me. Can you guys hear the audio when I played it?
You might have to go
Right.
back into the share the audio again on the screen share. Like you
That
did.
was weird because
But if you're just going
to
to say that we don't understand the fundamental nature of reality because we don't understand what the simple, like the smallest unit is in physics or something like that, I agree with that. We don't have a unified theory. I understand that. Like we can't explain everything.
No, I want you to hear how far off. I want you to hear how far off this astrophysicist says we are on our understanding of modern cosmology. Just listen to his own words.
There is a crisis in cosmology. Usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
So that's modern cosmology for you. It's the greatest mismatch in the history of science. That's how
he might be exaggerating. So I'd have to see exactly what he's talking about because he believes in string theory. He promotes string theory, which hasn't been verified. Like there's a concept of like 10 dimensions. Like, but our current theories only say there's 4. Well, 3 plus 1 if you consider time to be a dimension, right? So string theory is not a theory, it's a hypothesis, right? It's a theoretical physics. So we don't know if it's true. So he's right, there's holes, but I don't know how he can know how big the gap is.
I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but it is very interesting that an astrophysicist who would back the heliocentric model openly admits that we're far beyond accurate in modern cosmology, and we're drastically way off to the point where he says it's worse than any other field in science in history. That's his words. I don't know, like you said, how did he come up with that? But he's an astrophysicist that would support your model, you know?
Well, because it's local. There's no controversy about the heliocentric model. The controversy is about like cosmology overall. Like the current best model we have is Big Bang Theory, which only gets you to expansion. It doesn't get you past expansion because theory of relativity breaks down when you go beyond the first Planck time. Like the smallest unit of measurement we know there is for time is a Planck time. We can't, if we go beyond that point, theory of relativity doesn't work at all as far as we know. So there's problems, like everybody knows that. But the Big Bang Theory doesn't say there's a singularity. Like singularity is a hypothesis. It's probably like the evidence points towards a singularity, but we don't know if there was actually a singularity. We don't know what happened before the Big Bang or the expansion. I'd rather call it expansion. And even that's sort of speculative, I guess. I don't know. Not completely 100% convinced.
As far as the theory of relativity, though, I mean, Nikola Tesla, I think we can all agree, was a pretty smart dude.
Engineer.
He was a contemporary of, well, you know, he put together more things that work in the real world as far as technological advances than I'd say.
He probably changed the world more than any other man in human history did. I totally agree with that.
A great mind. And when he read Einstein's theory of relativity, he said, Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple, whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists. So, I mean, even in his time, when the theory of relativity was first being proposed by Einstein, he didn't buy into it, and he's a pretty smart dude.
There were people that were more prestigious than him in physics and cosmology that opposed Einstein's theory of relativity, right? But that's why they challenge it. So the idea behind science is to disprove your hypothesis, is to prove it wrong. They have not proven the theory of relativity wrong. They have, I don't know, I don't want to get into that, but they have to explain like the lensing of gravity for objects that are really far away doesn't work right. So they have to, they have a hypothesis for dark energy and dark matter to explain that, where it's like, what, 76% of the universe is dark or dark energy and dark matter or something like that, to explain expansion and all that stuff. But I'm not a cosmologist. But yeah, there's people smarter than Tesla in that field that didn't agree with Einstein. But that's irrelevant to science. People don't agree when new theories are proposed. They get tested. Beauty of science.
Yeah. Let me just get back to where I was there, because we had a couple chats come in while we were discussing that. If either of you need to get yourself any liquids or get rid of any liquids, I can direct a question to either one of the guests.
Got a few real quick.
Yep. All right. Take your time. And Ozien, I'll just pull this one up here. All right. And a lot of them are kind of non-directional, but they're kind of towards Mike. But let's see. Earlier in the chat, I had pulled a question from Loved From Above. So your question's going to get read here. They had said gravity has never been proven, period. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, here, I'll show you. Look.
Okay.
I proved it. Look, I'll prove it again. I proved it again.
Ooh,
gravity exists. Fun. Gravity is when things fall. So, and the theory of gravity is our attempt to explain why things fall, which is the theory of relativity. General relativity in particular is how we explain how things fall. The observation that things fall is incontrovertible. You can disagree with the label you apply to it. You can disagree with the theory that explains why things fall. But if you just want to deny that gravity exists because you don't like the word, well, that's sort of absurd. We observe things fall. If you want to see that's because there's a difference in density or whatever, we call that gravity. Like things fall, that's gravity.
That was very quick, your old pal Mike. You didn't tell me you had the powers of a racehorse. My. All right. I said take your time. No, it's all right. All right. So we'll continue on here.
Is he wearing pants? I don't want to know.
That's the question.
Oh, no.
Somebody brought it up in my Twitch stream earlier today. I wonder if like 60% of streamers don't wear pants. I'm like,
I thought about that before we did the stream.
I wouldn't want to stand up too quick. All right. Well, excellent.
Somebody did that on stream before.
Oh,
anyways,
I've seen the videos of some people doing that. Yeah. Awesome. So we'll continue on here. We're just talking about gravity a little bit. Kango 44, $11. Thank you so much. Mobile phone company, one in New Zealand. I think that's what they mean. Just did a deal with SpaceX Starlink to provide complete coverage for the country. So that's not ground base.
Yeah, it's not something I'm familiar enough with. It's something I'd have to look into. So I'm not just going to spout off information if I'm not aware of it. So sorry for your question, not getting a good answer. Apologize.
I just want to point out to people who get these dishes or whatever, you can calculate the azimuth angle and the elevation angle of your dish and go to like different spots at the same elevation above sea level. And you can calculate take 3 points and you can calculate how far away that satellite is based upon those angles and see if it matches what they tell you the altitude is.
All right. We'll continue on. Cool Lambo, $5. Flat earthers stop using educational material from children, and they're coming at you. That's a little bit of tacky, so we can skip that one.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind.
All right.
What was that?
they're being critical about the fact that I think you had referenced something to do with kids science class, or not entirely sure how it had gotten spun in the conversation. But I think given everything that we've talked about, it might be an unfair characterization of everything we've discussed, because we've talked about a lot more than that one thing. But if you want to address it, you're totally welcome.
What was the whole? It was just that we ditched
You
educational materials as a
referenced
child.
you
What is it?
referenced children's books for
Oh,
the
I was
eclipses.
just well, yeah, I was just saying you can even watch a kid's demonstration where it'll say the same thing, that the position of the moon has to be 180 degrees around the Earth. But as far as like ditching educational materials or calling people who are asking these sort of questions dumb, I mean, everyone's just searching for answers. As far as my perspective goes, it's not. I'm still exploring the models. I reject modern heliocentrism, but at the same time, there are elements of certain flat Earth models that I also reject. So I'm in the process of learning, which I'm hoping, like Ozien said earlier, you know, science is the process of testing things and testing hypotheses, and sometimes rejecting things, sometimes taking them in. So name calling really doesn't help anybody, you know. And some of the arguments, see, what won me over were the arguments. It was digging through hours and hours of experimentation is what ultimately switched me over. I didn't really have a bone to pick with the globe model Earth. I always thought it was a globe. So, I mean, it wasn't until more and more information started compiling that I started seeing holes in modern heliocentrism that I couldn't reconcile, you know?
Yeah, I just want to I think we need to spend more time learning about epistemological justification, why we believe something is true. If you're just taught that this is true, but you're not taught why it's true, and there's problem with foundational understanding of reality that can lead to all different types of beliefs. You know, most people believe in reality and all that stuff, but there's people that don't. But I do think that it's important that we teach children those type of things to understand why the Earth is a globe and not that it is a globe, right? So, but if you're just remembering something for a test, you're just regurgitating facts back out for some text in school. You're not really learning the why of it. And I don't think it's possible for any person to learn the why for everything we know. I know it's not possible. So we specialize. So like I can't specialize in cosmology. I'm at this point in my life, I'm too old to care too much. I don't even like doing these debates, to be honest. They got asked. I thought we were going to do the conspiracy theory eventually on the moon landing, which I would rather do. But anyways, just pointing that out. I don't reject the idea to use the children's book, but children's books often skip a lot of that stuff. They just say this is it. They don't explain why.
And I mean, I've watched more in-depth models. Please don't confuse me that I sat there and only watched like kids' YouTube on how the moon works or anything. I mean, when I was first studying the issue of the moon. I mean, I poured through every model I could find on YouTube, everything from children's all the way up to NASA's, to get a better grasp of it, you know. So please don't misunderstand and think I'm sitting at home with children's coloring books to get my cosmological information.
Well, I look for the refutations for claims. So I study the refutations. So if somebody makes some claim, I go to see if there's refutations for the claims. So, and I see what the majority opinions are on these claims and see if it relates to other things I believe are true. So I'm a naturalist. I'm an atheistic naturalist, actually. I believe everything's natural. Supernatural is false. So any supernatural claims automatically false to me. I think everything's physical. So where's it going with that? Anyways,
I think
see, I'm old now.
I think he's looking for things to debate on. He's searching for debate opponents there.
No.
Well, we'll definitely
go ahead. Atheism, naturalism. Yeah.
We'll definitely hit you guys up if you guys are open to it. We'll definitely have that discussion on the moon landing, because this has been really amicable conversation. I think we're getting a lot of benefit out of that by itself. That you guys are so polite in your engagement.
I'm mean. What are you talking about? I am so mean. And somebody said that. They said I was like angry.
No, I think we're all having a good time. I'm so sorry. You'll have to put on your angry voice. Yes,
Put
a
on the
little bit
hat.
more.
Put on the hat.
Yeah, the hat. This is the
Hat.
time.
Hat. Hat.
Yeah.
Boom. Steampunk, bro.
There we go.
Definitely.
Let's continue on. You can still hear me there. You got your headphones on.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Dial in.
I love that. I love it.
Boom.
My first debate. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I want to hear your story. I'm so sorry. We'll go ahead.
Oh, in my first debate on YouTube, I wore this with the whole steampunk outfit. It was a First Amendment audit debate, so I did it like the whole thing. It's funny. I liked it. Anyways.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot of fun. I was gonna say I've dressed up as some strange things in my rock and roll life.
People
here.
people accuse me of being a LARPer. I'm like, yeah, my wife has defended me in chat. She's like, he is a LARPer. They moderated her in chat. Like, I'm a LARPer.
I haven't got into much to LARPing yet, but I do play quite a bit of D&D on the weekends.
Just better D&D. Go ahead.
It's better D&D, yeah. It's a D&D walk, in life. But yeah, we'll continue on. So Rebecca says for 5,500 CLP. I'm just confused on what that currency is.
Chilean pesos.
Okay, thank you so much. On gyros. Yeah, I was gonna say I could have Googled that. I'm so sorry. That's just me fumbling through. On gyros, any ring RLG/FOB gyroscope will pick it up. The ones in all planes do. They get their latitude by turning them on. Your research on them is lacking. You can rent one.
No, my reference was to something entirely different. Mine wasn't to rotation. It had to do with pitch. And that's what people always misunderstand. They always reference that Bob Nodell gyroscope, which had to do with rotation. But this gyroscope wasn't trying to pick up rotation. It was picking up pitch over a distance.
That's the problem. That's what they're talking about. The rotation is pitch. Pitch is rotation. Pitch is a rotation. Yep. When it pitches 15 degrees, that's rotating. The gyroscope is like flat and it spins like this, right?
Yeah.
Pitch is when it rotates around its axes. So you have an x-axis gyroscope, a y-axis gyroscope. You have an axis like this and an axis like this, and an axis like this. So the pitch of the gyroscope is when you got the axis like this, it's pitching this way.
Yes.
When you got an axis like this, it's pitching. Well, no, I did that wrong. You got the axis like this. Well, you got the axis like this. It's pitching like this. Sorry, I did it backwards.
Yeah, it's
pitching like this.
Yeah, the three axes are referred to as pitch, roll, and yaw, basically on gyroscopes. And the rotation wouldn't come into play on a two. If rotation of the Earth is throwing, well, then how are they using it in robotics and drones if the curvature, if the Earth's rotation is going to be throwing those gyroscopes off or adding some sort of calculation to it? How do they stay calibrated when you're using a gaming system controller if the rotation of the Earth is going to be affecting this gyroscope? Because it's a totally different thing. I'm not talking about a ring gyroscope. I'm talking about a high precision accelerometer and gyroscope that's contained in the MPU 6050, which is not designed to pick up any type of motion of the Earth. You can look up its specs if anyone wants to, but it doesn't account for rotation. It's simply, like you said, it counts for the pivot of those axes. That's all it picks up.
That's affected by the Earth's rotation. So it stays level as the Earth rotates. If it's a good gyroscope, as you rotate it, the gyroscope doesn't move, right? If it's a very good gyroscope, but in reference to the ground, it moves. So if you say like the gyroscope's here, so the gyroscope stays like this. As the Earth rotates, the angle now between this middle point and my gyroscope is changed like to 45 degrees. So you're going to measure a 45-degree pitch or roll or yaw, depending on how you move the gyroscope, based upon the rotation of the Earth, right? Because if it's a very precise ring gyroscope, some gyroscopes, they have too much friction that because the Earth is moving so slowly, 15 degrees per hour, that it's not enough force to overcome the friction for the gyroscope, so it won't turn. Like, it maintains that force, but it will turn because of that, because it's so gradual. I'm backwards. It's such a gradual force that it causes the gyroscope to pitch with the Earth, right? Because there's too much friction in the gyroscope to keep it level. That friction can't overcome the force with the rotation of the Earth, but it could overcome the force, like if you turn it, because of the difference in the two forces. So,
well, this experiment,
I probably got it backwards.
This experiment thankfully went on a north-south trajectory. So even if you're saying that the spin of the Earth is going to affect that axis, well, the axis he's measuring is the north-south, which isn't going against or with the curvature of the Earth. So the pitch he's measuring is north-south. So even if you're saying that the MPU 6050 can pick up the rotation of the Earth, which I haven't seen any documentation that the rotation of the Earth affects that type of gyroscope. It would only affect an axis that he wasn't documenting anyways, because he's going north-south, not east-west.
It's still the same problem. If there's too much friction in the pitch, the speed of travel he's going with is too slow, that the gyroscope, because it's not a high quality gyroscope, will roll with him changing with his speed, because he's not going quick enough. Yeah, so with drones and stuff, drones move very quick, right? They're snappy and quick. Well, actually, they're not even that quick, but they don't go very far. They go like 5 miles, right? So 5 miles, the Earth hasn't dropped hardly at all compared to, the size of the Earth. So that could be what he's dealing with, is that he's going too slowly to be able to notice that change of the curvature of the Earth.
Yeah, that's not how the experiment is designed to operate. Like, I think it's getting
he needs a ring gyroscope. Get a ring gyroscope.
Yeah, but that's what everyone's misunderstanding. They're going back to that Bob Nodell thing where it has to do with rotation.
No, unrelated to Bob Nodell. It's not related to that. It's related to the precision of the equipment, because there's no friction involved in the spinning gyroscope with the laser ring gyroscope. So you don't have to account for, I think it's precession or whatever in the gyroscope. You don't have to worry about, because if you turn a gyroscope, say like you take a gyroscope spinning like this and you turn it like this, eventually it will precess to match that. So instead of being here and you spin it, it will. If you got the axis here and you turn it, eventually it will precess to match that, depending on the speed it does that is determined by the quality of that gyroscope.
Yeah, but these are manufactured in a way that it's not designed to recalibrate itself. Like you said, if you put it up at an angle, what he's trying to measure is how much of that tilt did that gyroscope actually experience. So if you're driving across a flat surface, it's not going to pick up very much pitch other than the bumps in the road. It's going to pick up little hills. It's going to pick up valleys, but it should also pick up, as it drastically goes over the curvature, it should pick up that angle as well, but it doesn't.
If you move it if you spin the gyroscope at a speed that's slower than it can precess, then you're not going to know it. It's always going to stay level with the Earth. So if you're going, like, say, like if you turn it, but the thing moves, the actual gyroscope moves at the rate you turn it, then you're not going to notice any angular difference between what it was when you first calibrated it to where you go before, because it will precess at the rate that you're turning it. So you don't have that problem in ring gyroscopes, because there's no friction. There's no problem with precession of the gyroscope. I'm hoping I'm using the right terms, but I know that's how they work. So they do eventually reach that angle. So if you're going around the Earth like this and you're going so slow, so you're looking for it to go, I'm going around the Earth right this, but my thing stays like this, right? But if it precesses at the rate you're going, then you're not going to notice. That's why you have to use laser ring gyroscopes if you want to remove that problem with it precessing as you change. I hope I'm using the right word with precession there. Anyways, but that's what you need a ring gyroscope if you really want to be accurate.
Yeah, see, these aren't designed to do what you're describing. It's a totally different product. I think you should look up the MPU 6050 and
Is
learn
it a
more about it
gyroscope?
because-
Is it a gyroscope?
Yeah, it's
Is
designed to hold a point in space and not be affected by, because essentially
That's
what you're saying is
impossible.
what you're saying is that as you gradually go around the Earth's gravity, no matter what speed he travels, if he's going 10 miles an hour, if he's
No.
going 60 miles an hour, it's always going to keep leveling that gyroscope back to as if it's level. And I'm arguing that that's not how that product operates. It's designed to hold a point in space, and whatever way that thing tilts, it's going to pick up that tilt. Even if it's over a long distance or a short distance, it will pick up that pitch. So that's how it's designed to operate.
It's
What you're
precession.
describing might be a different style of gyroscope, but the one in the MPU
It's all of them.
6050 would not recalibrate itself
No.
as you're driving around the Earth, or
It's
whatever
not
word it is.
It's not recalibrating itself.
Yeah,
It's precession. So and every moving gyroscope is prone to precession because of gravity. So if you're moving, they're going to be prone to precession.
I thought it was because of friction, though. Isn't
Well,
it because of friction? It's because as it's turning, no device is perfectly without friction, right? So
a
over
laser
time,
gyroscope.
yeah, the precession is what you're saying. But this, again, he's only going a 200-mile distance, and he's doing it within a, one day of time span. I don't remember how many hours he drove across.
It's too
but it's
long.
It's designed. These things are highly precise.
I'd
And
have to
they're
look at the
designed to
specs.
not be yeah, that's the thing, is you got to understand the specs a little better. I've watched in-depth breakdowns on these because I was going to start experimenting with them, but
if you're saying they're not prone to gravity and precession, you're wrong. They are. So the rate that's prone to it would depend on the type of gyroscope, how quickly it precesses.
That's my point, is that there's no way that it eliminated the entire amount of pitch that should exist, because it's going to precess in that exact amount of time just to it. What level of coincidence would that be that gyroscope was manufactured in such a way that his exact speed and his exact distance left him at the end of his journey as though the Earth was level? That means it's precessing perfectly as though the Earth is level.
It means he's going slow enough that it can precess at the rate he's moving.
That's what I'm saying. That's an amazing coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence. He'd have to go faster to overcome the precession due to gravity. So if you travel at 50 miles per hour or less, let's just say that, I don't know what it is, that the precession due to gravity will maintain it level to the center of gravity. And to overcome the precession due to gravity, you'd have to go faster than 50 miles per hour, let's say. I don't know what it is for your thing. And even then, you still have to subtract the torque, that portion that's due to the 50 miles per hour that's causing it to progress, and calculate that as an error in your overall measurement. So I'm thinking the error of his overall measurement was greater than his measurement, the time he did it in. So I'm not saying that it didn't accurately measure. I'm saying it accurately measured within that tolerance, but his tolerance was 100%, plus or minus 100%.
All right.
So
that question was for your old pal Mike. So we'll let him close out on that one. We'll give you a couple seconds there just to close that, and then we're going to continue on out of respect for the the people that submitted their questions here, because we do have a few more to get through, and we've been going for 3 hours. So I do want to respect you fellas' time and also get through the super chats as well. So I'll let you close that one out there, your old pal.
Yeah, I would just say that that's not how the MPU 6050 would be affected in that distance. And I would say for it to go 200-mile distance where over 26,000 feet of drop should be present, that's a pretty coincidental speed that he would be driving for it to process at the exact rate that it would make the Earth appear level. So that's my last statement on that. So,
all right. Excellent. We'll move on. Flanker 420 for $10. I'm an astrophotographer and I take pictures of the rotating planets and long exposures of Andromeda galaxy with optical telescopes. Are my photos fake? Why would our planet be different?
well, I don't think the photos are fake themselves. The explanation for what they are, we might disagree on, but I don't think the photos, are fake. What was the last part of that question? I'm sorry. There's one little thing I
The
wanted to
last part
comment.
was why would our planet be different? And
So my comment to that is if we're going to judge what we see in the sky, because I hear that a lot. Well, everything else above us is a sphere. Why isn't the place we live a sphere? But if we're going to use that as our criteria for judging the shape of the Earth, like what we see in the sky, then we should also conclude that there's no plants here, there's no animals here, there's no people here, because we don't see any of those in the sky either. So to say that we see spherical objects in the sky, therefore what we're standing on must be a sphere, then by the same reasoning, then, well, I guess there's no animals or plants or people here because we don't see that in the sky either. Using the sky as a criteria for the shape of the Earth rather than actually testing its convexity, I don't think is a wise way to come to a conclusion.
It's also a fallacy composition, is saying what's true of a part is true of the whole. So you can't necessarily say because it's true of all other planets, it ought to be true of the Earth. But I think you do have a principle of parsimony or Occam's razor or something. Like, why would there be different types of shapes due to gravity and stuff like that? And we have tons of other explanations for why the Earth is a sphere, other than just appealing to what we see in other things. But I do think it's good evidence when you want a simple explanation for everything to think all other planets are the same as the Earth.
any close out on that where that was towards you? Or do you want to continue?
I did have something to say, but I brain fart, so just go ahead and go forward.
Oh, yeah, that's all right.
I was agreeing and disagreeing.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, no, that happens. That happens. I know all about having brain farts, and I've been in people's left ears all night because I forgot to take OBS out of stereo mode and put it in mono mode, and that'll have to get fixed post.
Oh,
hopefully.
people were complaining about that. I saw that.
I remember real quick. I just did want to make one comment on gravity is that pretty much everything can be explained. This is the tricky part because you have to accept that there's just a universal up and a universal down. Just like we can't fully describe what, say, gravity would be, right? Or what electricity is. We can describe it, we can measure it, but we can't say precisely necessarily what it is to the fullest extent. I know there are detailed explanations, but I would say that everything we see that rises and falls can be explained with the simple explanation that this material or this gas or whatever is either more dense or less dense than the medium that surrounds it. Outside of electromagnetism, everything that rises or falls, like a balloon, it doesn't rise from the surface of the Earth because it's anti-gravity. It rises because the helium within it is less dense than the air that surrounds it. And I believe that everything on Earth outside of electromagnetism can be described with that. Maybe Ozien has a testable example that defies that. I'm just curious on that. Do you have an example of something rising or falling outside of electromagnetism that couldn't be explained by density and buoyancy?
Everything like buoyancy requires gravity to be true as part of the calculation for buoyancy. So if you're appealing to buoyancy, you're appealing to gravity. So
How is
it's
that?
correct. The
How is
formula
that?
for the formula for buoyancy includes gravity. How buoyant something is determined by the gravity and the relative density between the two objects. So if
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I understand the calculations within the heliocentric model require that, but I'm saying as a visual observer of the things around me, is there an object that you can say requires space-time to bend around it to make it rise or fall? Or do these objects that fall, are they always more dense than the medium around them, would you say?
the objects that fall are typically, it depends on the shape. So planes are not more dense
But
than
they're using
the air
thrust.
around it. They're using thrust and they're using lift to maintain their altitude,
Yeah,
right?
that's different.
Well, I know. I'm just explaining that depends.
Well,
Like
if you
birds and stuff. But if you want to say that it's buoyant, but buoyancy, so like we learned this in school. We measured the volume is something, we measure the mass is something, we measure the density of things, we measure the weight, which is different from the mass, right? So we do all this stuff in junior high and high school and stuff like that. We measure buoyancy, we calculate what buoyancy is. All these differences between all these measurements is explained by this weird thing, 9.8 meters per second squared. That it's a phenomenon. If you want to see that's caused by buoyancy, you've got a circular problem in your argument. You're seeing buoyancy is causing buoyancy. Like, but
No,
that's not the case.
I'm saying any material that's less dense than the medium around it will rise, and any material more dense than the medium around it will fall. You can say that that's caused by gravity, but every object either falls or rises that I'm aware of without the explanation of gravity, just by being either more dense or less dense than the medium around it. It
But
doesn't need space-time bending around it for that explanation. It can just simply be more dense. And I understand on the globe model Earth that it requires the force of gravity for these things to operate. But on a geocentric Earth, there's no need for space-time to bend around anything. It's just more
it's
dense things fall, less dense things
you're
rise.
correct. You don't have to appeal to space time. You can appeal to Newtonian physics. You can appeal to simple physical interactions of things, and you can measure using the Cavendish experience, the gravitational constant, and all that stuff to calculate why we get 9.8 meters per second squared, why the formula for gravity is the way it is. You can do all those calculations, but that's irrelevant. The concept you're describing of buoyancy, of why things rise, why helium rise, embedded into that is this force that on Earth is measured as 9.8 meters per second squared. We can drop things from high altitudes and they accelerate, and we can put accelerometers on them to measure the rate of acceleration as it drops from high altitudes.
Well,
And
I don't want to.
that is
I don't want to interrupt
Go
too
ahead.
much. Just because we're going down the rabbit hole of gravity here, and we still have a few more super chats to go through, and we don't want you to be throwing your cords around too much there, Ozien, because you know you don't want to break them. We don't want you to whip out the cords again. So we'll try to continue on here, but if you guys want to, you know, I'm sure that when we get talking about the moon landing and stuff like that, we'll definitely get on the topic of the same similar things. So hopefully we'll be able to expand a little bit more at that time. But for now, we'll continue on. We have another perspective for $10. Thank you so much. Says, what does waking up from the Matrix mean to both of you? Think about your answer. Oh my.
So I recently think I've had an epiphany, like where I realize I'm probably a type physicalist, so everything's reducible to simples like bosons and whatever the smallest unit of things are. That means there's a problem with understanding of psychological states and understanding of emergent properties that I have to deal with. That could be the case that some of the things I think are true are actually sort of like fictional things that we evolved to believe. So that's one thing. Go ahead.
The concept of, obviously, I don't know the questionnaires definition of waking up from the matrix, but when I hear that phrase, it's not one I've really commonly used or been familiar with. But to me, it reminds me of just waking up from deception. Anytime you see through deception, I would correlate that to waking up from the matrix, I guess. But again, I don't know the questioner's, definition of the matrix, so I'm sure that can vary from person to person a bit. But I would say it's just waking up from deception. As soon as you it's really eye-opening, and it is almost like waking up when you see something that's such a broad and blatant and huge lie, that maybe you've believed in for even most of your life, and suddenly you realize it's not true. It's pretty weird.
Sure.
I guess our host
I know. I don't have
abandoned
yours.
us.
Oh, there
There
he
you go.
goes. We finished the question just as you showed up.
Perfect
Can we call you
timing.
James now?
Uh,
I
Perfect.
realize that
Ryan.
label.
oh yeah, I was gonna say that's from logging into the other Zoom account there. Oh, that was my mistake of earlier. So, I'm not a racehorse, so I had to do what I could there to get back to you fellas. I'm glad that I got back just in time. So, let's see. There was actually an extra on that question. It said, what does waking up from the matrix mean to both of you? Think about your answer. And then the other part of that was, I just want to see where y'all at existentially speaking when it comes to our reality of things, which I figure you guys kind of expounded on. Probably, yeah.
I think I explained that I'm a non-skeptical realist type physicalist.
All right. Sounds like we got that all out. So, Balthazar 228, $5 Nest controller pillow OP. Oh yeah, you like that. There's the old Nest controller pillow there, and then if you look up there, we have all the Spider-Man posters on the wall.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's all kinds of fun. That's my wife's decorations right there. She's a huge Marvel fan. So
Good taste.
oh yes, excellent. Alrighty, so thanks for that right there. Siggy Sigwald, $5. Cool. I'm not singing this time. All previous models could predict things, but not explain them. In the same way Newton understood the mechanics of gravity, but Einstein explained it.
Okay. Yes.
That's a perspective. Definitely. Not so much a question, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
We can continue on. Thank you so much for your super chat there. Balthazar strikes again for 228. This time not about the pillow. So for $5, you could even win a Nodal, I think it means Nobel Prize, for trying to prove the flat Earth and end up proving the opposite.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure where to go with that.
Yeah, we can continue on if you're not sure what we can do with that. We just had a couple more super chats come in here. Sorry, I had to set my mic down because I'm trying to gather up these super chats that just flew in while we were having that talk there. All right, back over here. Balthazar, 228 again for $20. Thanks for your donations and your super chats. One of the best parts of all the globe proofs is you can do all the experiments yourself to verify. Who knows? If you do an experiment, you too can prove a 15 degree per hour drift and a globe Earth. Thanks, Bob.
Yes.
As far as that was one of the things that made me leave the globe model Earth, was the complete absence of experimentation. Every time I would look up what are the best experiments to demonstrate the globe model Earth, they basically siphon through kind of the same examples. You can watch a boat going over the curve. They like to use eclipses as the shadow of the Earth on the moon. as one of their things. They love to bring up Eratosthenes, and the sticks and shadows that he conducted over 2,000 years ago. But even Neil deGrasse Tyson admits that that same calculation could be used to prove that the Earth is small and localized as opposed to distant and massive. So to me, it was the lack of experimentation that demonstrated the globe model Earth, as opposed to the flip side, where I was finding laser experiments, high altitude experiments, infrared experiments, gyroscope experiments, a whole plethora of experiments being done from people all over the Earth, non-affiliated, sometimes a single researcher, sometimes a group of researchers. And when I weighed the amount of experimentation I could find that demonstrated that the curvature didn't exist against the articles and videos telling me that all I have to do is watch a ship go over the curve, or Eratosthenes sticks in the ground prove it, or technically it was a tower in a well or whatever from Cyan to Alexandria in Egypt, that he actually paid a guy to calculate the distance by walking. But it was the massive amount of experimentation showing the curvature didn't exist is what convinced me, and the complete lack of experimentation. And that has to do with convexity. Rotation is a totally different subject. I'm just talking about convexity here. So.
Yeah, you can't do all experiments. Large Hadron collider is expensive to use, but you can do a lot. Anyways, I only have a few more minutes too, so I don't know how many more super chats there are. But...
Yeah, we can blast through these right quick. So sorry if we got a little bit long there, Ozien, but we do appreciate you guys being here. So let's see, Sigwald, $5. All previous models could predict things but not explain them. Yeah, we already read that. I'm gonna try to not do that again. Nominal for $10 says, when the students do their tests, experiments, and papers while presupposing that they are on a ball, could they not invoke things like gravity, refraction, and dark matter to affirm their presuppositions?
I didn't really hear the question. I'm like tired, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're just asking when students do tests and papers while presupposing a ball, could they not invoke things like gravity, refraction, and dark matter?
They can do whatever they want to. It doesn't mean it's going to be correct.
All right. And we'll try to get through this last one here. Mark Reed, $5, our last super chat. Says YOPM, your old pal Mike. Sorry, YOPM. I don't know why I read it that way. If density is the cause of downward acceleration, then why do objects of different density fall at the same rate if you eliminate air resistance?
Because you eliminate the air resistance.
All
I
right.
mean, if there's no resistance there, what is there to fight against? To me, that is a better explanation for why these things would fall. If there's nothing resisting against it, there's no pushback, the density almost doesn't matter. I mean, there's no medium around it. So if these things fall at the same rate, I don't really see the problem there.
Just want to say Mark Reed is in the Discord chat right now. If you want to talk to him, come to Discord. He'll debate you on that too. I have nothing to say else.
All right. Any closing thoughts from either of you gentlemen? Anything?
No,
Sorry, go ahead.
I appreciated the conversation. It's respectful. I got really angry and heated a little bit. I interrupted you a couple times, but I think that's sort of natural as part of the dialogue. Anyways, moving the points along. But I appreciated it. Thanks, Ryan and Mike.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you, your old pal Mike. This was your first time coming out here. Thank you so much for coming to Modern Day Debate. I think this was fantastic, and we'll definitely see about having you guys back on to talk about the moon landing there. I think that would be a lot of fun. So we'll talk about that later, because I know Zion's getting tired there. Because it's been going for a little bit. It's actually past 12 here. Everybody's in bed. So your old pal Mike, if you want to just tell everybody what they expect to find at your link there, where you're brand new, and then we'll close out.
I would just say, like I said prior, live debate isn't the best place to go in depth on this subject. If you do go on Facebook to the Flat Earth Archive page, you'll find a lot of videos, a lot of resources to help you dig deeper into this subject, since it is a little harder to find these days. And I did appreciate Ozien. I totally appreciate communicating with you. I've been in a couple other debates that were much more insulting in nature. So I do appreciate this time with you, man. It was good to talk. And Ryan, I appreciate all our correspondence prior to this, hearing your lovely singing voice and your rock star talents. That was pretty cool. And yeah, just a good time of discussion. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's why I don't turn up my vocal gain very high naturally. I'm not used to that because I'm usually screaming into this microphone. So thanks guys for coming out. We're going to close out for the night. Just remember everybody, DebateCon 3.0, Fort Worth in Texas, April 22nd, just $1. And you can watch that live from wherever you are. Or join us live. That's cool too. Have a great night, everybody. And thank you so much for coming out.
Later.
Cheers, fellas.
Bye.